They called her the ghost of the Varelli mansion, a wife who didn't speak unless spoken to, a woman so quiet that even the cameras in her own house forgot she existed. For 3 years, Vera Dane wore her husband's last name like a collar, and the most feared Mafia boss on the East Coast treated her like furniture he'd stopped noticing. But on the night Roman Varelli's mistress decided to humiliate her in front of every crime family in the city, something inside Vera cracked open, and what crawled out of that crack was not the broken wife they expected. It was something older, colder, something that had been waiting. If you want to see how a silent woman can burn a kingdom to the ground without ever raising her voice, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels tonight. The rain had been falling over the city for 3 straight days when Vera Dane sat down at the long mahogany table for breakfast, and nobody looked up. That was the rule of the house. You didn't look at her unless Roman looked at her first. And Roman almost never did. He sat at the head of the table in a black shirt rolled to the elbows, reading something on his phone with the small crease between his brows that meant somebody, somewhere, had made a mistake they were going to pay for. His hair was still wet from the shower. His coffee was still steaming. He hadn't said good morning. He hadn't said good morning in 4 months. Vera counted things like that. Not because she was bitter, because counting was what kept her hands still. More coffee, Mrs. Varelli? The voice came from Marta, the older housekeeper, the only person in the mansion who treated Vera like a human being instead of a decoration. Marta had been with the Varelli family since Roman was 10 years old. She had watched his mother die of cancer in the East Wing. She had seen 3 wives come through that dining room before Vera. Only one of them had walked out alive. "Please," Vera said softly. "Thank you, Marta." Roman didn't look up from his phone, but the man sitting to his right did. Dante Rocca, Roman's underboss. A heavy, quiet man in his early 50s with a face that looked like it had been assembled out of spare parts. Crooked nose, deep scar along the jaw, eyes the color of wet slate. He had known Roman since they were boys in the old neighborhood. He was the only person in the organization Roman trusted completely, and everybody knew it. Dante looked at Vera the way he always looked at her, with something close to pity. She met his eyes for half a second and then looked back down at her plate. "Roman." Dante's voice was low. "Careful." "The Castellano thing. Tonight." "I know. He's bringing his whole circle. Pavel's coming in from Brighton. The Sardis are sending the younger one." "I know, Dante." "Then you know what I'm going to say." Roman finally looked up from his phone. He set it face down on the table with a small, precise click. "Say it anyway." Dante glanced at Vera, just a flicker, then back at Roman. "Not here. She doesn't listen." "Roman?" "She doesn't, Dante. Look at her." And for the first time that morning, Roman Varelli looked at his wife. Vera felt it the way you feel a hand closing around the back of your neck. His eyes were pale gray, almost silver, and they had a way of taking inventory of a person, measuring, weighing, deciding what you were worth and how much of you he needed. She had fallen in love with those eyes once, in another life, at a charity gala in Geneva where he had asked her to dance and told her she had the saddest mouth he'd ever seen. That had been 4 years and 1,000 miles of silence ago. "Vera," he said. "Yes." "Tell Dante what we talked about last night." She did not look up. "We didn't talk last night, Roman." A beat of silence. Even Marta stopped pouring. Dante's mouth twitched, the closest that man ever got to a smile. Roman leaned back in his chair. He didn't look angry. He looked amused, which was worse. "See?" he said to Dante. "She doesn't listen. She doesn't speak. She's furniture with a heartbeat. Say whatever you want in front of her." Vera's hand tightened around her coffee cup. Just slightly. Just enough that a single drop sloshed over the rim and hit the white tablecloth. She watched the stain spread. Brown, slow, permanent. "The Castellano gathering tonight," Dante said, and his voice had dropped into the flat register he used when he was about to say something Roman didn't want to hear. "I don't think she should go." "She's going. Roman. She's my wife. She's going." "She hasn't been to one of these in over a year. The families are going to ask questions. Castellano already asked me last week if you'd killed her." Roman laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "He asked that?" "He asked that." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him you don't waste bullets on things you can ignore." Roman laughed again, harder this time. He picked up his coffee and drank. Vera sat very still. That's good, Dante. That's good. I'm going to use that. Roman, listen to me. Sending her tonight. In that room. With Sienna there. Especially with Sienna there. Dante went quiet. Vera kept her eyes on the stain. Sienna Marchetti. The mistress. The not-quite secret that everyone in the city knew about, including Vera. A former model, Sicilian on her father's side, Russian on her mother's, with a laugh you could hear 3 rooms away, and a habit of leaving her earrings in Roman's car. She had been with him for almost 2 years now. She came to the mansion when she felt like it. She ate at this table when she felt like it. Last Christmas, she had given Vera a bottle of perfume and said, with a smile so sweet it could rot teeth, I thought you could use something to make him notice you. Vera had thanked her and put the bottle in the guest bathroom. Sienna will be there tonight, Roman said, still looking at his wife. She'll be on my arm. Vera will sit at the family table with the other wives. That's where she belongs. That's where she's always belonged. Roman? Enough, Dante. There was a silence. Then Roman's voice, softer, almost curious. Vera, look at me. She looked up. He was studying her the way he studied a contract before he signed it, like he was looking for a trap and couldn't quite find one. Are you going to embarrass me tonight? No, Roman. Are you going to cry? No, Roman. Are you going to make a scene? No, Roman. Good girl. He went back to his phone. Dante closed his eyes for one long second. Vera folded her napkin, set it on the table, and stood up. She had not finished her breakfast. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever did. She walked out of the dining room with her back straight and her hands loose at her sides, and she did not start shaking until she had closed the bedroom door behind her and locked it. Then she sat down on the floor. Not on the bed, not on the chaise her husband had imported from Milan for her 32nd birthday, and never once seen her sit in. The floor. The cold hardwood floor next to the window, where the rain was running down the glass in long silver threads. She put her forehead against her knees, and she breathed, in, out, the way her grandfather had taught her a long time ago, in a basement apartment in a country that no longer existed under the name she had been born with. Breathe, little bird, he used to say. Breathe and listen and wait. The ones who survive are not the ones who strike first. They are the ones who are still breathing when everyone else has run out of bullets. Vera had been breathing for a very long time. At 2 p.m, the stylist arrived. Her name was Francesca. She came from a boutique on Madison that Sienna had recommended, which meant Sienna had chosen the dress, which meant the dress was going to be a weapon. Vera stood in the middle of the dressing room in her robe and watched Francesca unzip the garment bag. Oh, Francesca said, and she had the grace to hesitate. Mrs. Varelli, are you sure? Show me. The dress came out of the bag like something alive. It was red. Not the deep, dignified red of a wife at a family dinner. The red of a fire truck. The red of a warning sign. It was cut low in the front and lower in the back, and the slit on the leg went almost to the hip. There was no lining where a lining should be. The fabric was cheap. The stitching was rushed. It was, very clearly, the dress of a woman who was meant to look ridiculous. Who picked this? Vera asked. Francesca looked at the floor. Miss Marchetti said it was Mr. Varelli's request. Miss Marchetti is a liar. Francesca's head snapped up. Vera had not raised her voice. She had simply stated a fact, the way you might say it's raining. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, Yes, ma'am. Francesca. Yes, Mrs. Varelli. How long have you been doing this? 16 years. Have you ever dressed me before? No, ma'am. Miss Marchetti said you preferred to shop alone. Miss Marchetti says a lot of things. Vera walked over to the garment rack along the back wall. She kept her own clothes here, the ones she bought on her rare trips into the city when Dante sent a driver to follow her and pretend he wasn't following her. She pushed aside a line of soft cashmeres and pale silks, the wardrobe of a woman who was trying very hard to disappear, and stopped at the back. There was a black garment bag there, plain, unmarked. She had been saving it for 3 years. She had bought it in Zurich, at a house that did not have a sign out front and did not accept walk-ins, under a name that was not Varelli. She had paid in cash. She had carried the bag onto the plane herself and hung it in the back of her closet and waited for a night she would need it. She had not expected that night to come so soon. Or maybe she had. Maybe she had always known. Francesca, she said, without turning around. Yes, Mrs. Varelli. Take that red thing and put it back in the bag. Take the bag and put it in the fireplace. Light the fireplace. A beat. Mrs. Varelli. Then stay. I'd like you to do my hair. Francesca came up behind her slowly. What are you wearing tonight? Vera unzipped the black bag. Francesca made a small sound in the back of her throat. It was not a loud dress. It was not a dress designed to be looked at. It was a dress designed to be reckoned with. Midnight black, floor-length, high-necked, long-sleeved. The kind of cut that made a room go quiet the way a gun being cocked makes a room go quiet. No jewelry on it, no shine. Just architecture. Just purpose. Oh my God, Francesca whispered. Who made this? A man in Switzerland. What's his name? He doesn't have one anymore. Francesca stared at her. Vera turned around. For the first time all day, she smiled. It was a small smile. It did not reach her eyes, but it was a real one. And it was not for Roman, and it was not for Sienna, and it was not for the Castellano family, or the Sardis, or Pavel, or any of the men who were, at that very moment, polishing their watches and loading their sidearms and preparing to watch her be destroyed. It was for her grandfather. Breathe, little bird, and wait. Francesca, she said, let's get to work. In Roman's study, on the other side of the house, Sienna was laughing. She sat on the edge of his desk with one leg crossed over the other, a glass of white wine in her hand, and she was laughing so hard her mascara was running. The red dress, Roman, I bought her the red dress. She's going to look like a prostitute at a funeral. Roman was at the window, hands in his pockets, watching the rain. He did not laugh. Roman. Are you even listening? I'm listening. Sienna slid off the desk and walked up behind him. She was tall, almost as tall as he was in her heels, and she smelled like the perfume he had bought her in Paris last month. Something French, something expensive, something he did not actually like. She put her arms around his waist from behind. She's going to break tonight, baby. In front of everyone. In front of Castellano. And then it'll finally be over, and we can stop pretending. Pretending what? That she's your wife. Roman did not answer. Roman. What? You said after tonight. I said a lot of things. She let go of him, stepped back. Roman. He turned around. In the gray light from the window, his face looked older than 39. There were lines around his mouth she had not noticed before. There was something in his eyes she did not recognize. What's wrong with you today? She said. Nothing. You're being weird. I'm being tired. You're being weird, Roman. You've been weird since this morning. Did something happen at breakfast? He looked at her for a long time. Then he said very quietly, She didn't cry. What? When I told her about tonight, when Dante tried to talk me out of it. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't do anything. Sienna rolled her eyes. That's because she's a dish rag, Roman. That's what I've been telling you. She's not a person. She's a shape you married. That's why this whole thing is so easy. Roman kept looking at the rain. She didn't cry, he said again. Not this morning, not last week, not at Christmas when you gave her that thing, that perfume, not when I told her I wouldn't be home for our anniversary. Not once, Sienna, in almost a year. Not once. So when was the last time you met a woman in my house who didn't cry? Sienna opened her mouth, closed it. Roman finally turned and looked at her. I married her because her family was useful, he said. I keep her because she's quiet. I was going to send her back to her people in the spring. You knew that. You know that. I know that. But I've been thinking about something Dante said. Dante says a lot of things. He said she's been quiet for too long. Sienna's smile thinned. He said people who are quiet for too long are usually listening. He said the quietest man he ever killed turned out to be the one who'd been writing everything down for the feds for 6 years. He said, Roman stopped. He said we never asked her what she was doing before I met her. She was a nobody, Roman. She was at some charity. Her father was a diplomat from some country nobody can find on a map. That's it. That's the whole story. That's the story she told me. Roman, get out, Sienna. She froze. What? Get out of my study. Go do your hair. Be ready at 7. Roman, what the hell? I said, get out. She stared at him for one more second. Then she picked up her wine and her jacket, and she left. The door slammed behind her. Roman stood at the window for a long time. The rain kept coming down. Somewhere on the other side of the house, his wife was getting dressed for a party that was supposed to end her, and for the first time in 4 years of marriage, Roman Virelli realized he did not actually know what his wife was going to do when she walked into that room. He found to his considerable surprise that the feeling was not fear. It was something much more dangerous. It was curiosity. At 6:45, Dante Rocca came up the long curved staircase with 2 of his men and stopped in front of Vera's bedroom door. He knocked once. Mrs. Virelli, the car's ready. 1 minute, Dante. He waited. He was good at waiting. He had been waiting all his life. He thought, while he waited, about a phone call he had received 2 weeks ago from a friend in Interpol who owed him a favor from a long time ago. He had made the call on a whim. Just to check. Just to be sure. Roman had told him to run the usual background on Vera's family 4 years ago, before the wedding, and Dante had done it, and it had come back clean. Diplomat father, dead mother. No siblings. Boarding school in Lucerne. Charity work in Geneva. Clean. Too clean. Dante had been in this life for 41 years, and one thing he had learned was that backgrounds which were clean were almost always written that way on purpose. So he had called his friend, and he had said, do me a favor, pull the file on the grandfather. The grandfather was supposed to be dead. The grandfather was supposed to have been a school teacher in a small town in the mountains. His friend at Interpol had called him back 3 days later and said, Dante, where did you get this name? Dante, I'm serious. Where did you get this name? And Dante had not told Roman. He had not told anybody. He had sat on it for 11 days, turning it over in his mind, asking himself what it meant that Roman Virelli had married the granddaughter of a man whose name, in certain rooms, in certain cities, in certain countries, could stop a conversation the way a gunshot stops a conversation. And tonight, when Roman had said she's going, Dante had almost opened his mouth and told him. He hadn't. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was because, in 41 years, Dante Rocca had watched 3 of Roman's wives come through this house, and he had watched 2 of them leave in ways that still woke him up at 4 in the morning sometimes. Maybe it was because he liked Vera. Maybe it was because he was tired. Maybe it was because Sienna Marchetti had been whispering in Roman's ear for 2 years, and he wanted, very quietly, to see what would happen when that whispering met the woman standing behind this door. The door opened. Dante's breath caught. He had been a made man in this life for 41 years. He had stood across from kings of the underworld on 3 continents. He had watched his best friend's father put a bullet in a rival boss at a christening. He did not flinch easily. He flinched now. Vera Virelli. No. Vera Dane. The name rose up in Dante's mind like a flare from a ship sinking in the dark. Vera Dane. Because this woman standing in the doorway was not Roman's wife. This woman was someone else entirely, someone he had not been introduced to yet. The dress was black, not fashionable black, old black, the kind of black that women wore in countries where widows had power. Her hair was pulled back severely. Her only jewelry was a single thin silver chain around her neck with a pendant so small he could not make out the shape. No rings, not even her wedding band. She had taken it off. Dante Rocca, who did not cross himself, had the sudden irrational urge to cross himself. Dante, Mrs. Virelli, I'd like you to ride with me, in the car, not the front. Ma'am? I'd like you in the back seat with me. He stared at her. Something wrong, he said. No? Then why? Because I think you already know, Dante. Everything in him went cold. He did not ask what she meant. He did not have to. He had been doing this too long to not understand the shape of what he was looking at. He had run background checks on 4 wives. He had gotten 4 clean reports. 3 of those wives were dead or gone. And standing in front of him in the doorway of a bedroom she had barely slept in for 4 years was the 4th. And she knew he had made the call. She had known before he made it. Dante felt for the first time in a very long time something moving underneath his feet. Something slow. Something old. Something he did not control. Mrs. Virelli, he said carefully. Yes, Dante. Are you going to kill my boss tonight? She smiled. It was the smile he had seen on her at breakfast, the one she gave the stain on the tablecloth. Small, tired, very, very patient. No, Dante, I'm not going to kill your boss tonight. Okay. I'm going to let him watch. The car was a black armored Mercedes with tinted windows. The driver's name was Luca. He was 26, and he had been driving for Roman for 4 years, and he had never once heard Mrs. Varelli say more than 2 words to him. Tonight she said, "Good evening, Luca. Your mother's recovery? How is it going?" Luca nearly hit the mailbox at the end of the driveway. "Ma'am? Your mother. The surgery in September. I sent flowers under Marta's name. I didn't want it to be strange." Luca stared at her in the rearview mirror. His mouth opened, closed. She's doing good, Mrs. Varelli. She's walking again." "I'm glad." Thank you, ma'am." He drove the rest of the way with both hands on the wheel and a very strange feeling in his chest. Beside Vera in the back seat, Dante Rocca sat very still, with his hand resting lightly on the sidearm under his jacket, and he thought, "This is not the woman we thought we were bringing to a party. This is a woman we're driving to a summit." Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The streets of the city were slick and black and shining. Through the tinted glass, Vera watched the neighborhoods change, the wide lawns of the Varelli compound giving way to the long, dark stretch of parkway, the parkway giving way to the bridge to the city proper, all of its lights coming on one by one, like an audience taking its seats. She pressed the pendant at her throat with 2 fingers. "Breathe, little bird." She had not worn this pendant in 19 years. She had hidden it in the hem of a coat, the wall of a boarding school dormitory, the back of a photograph of a woman who had never existed, the inside lining of a garment bag flown in from Zurich. Tonight, for the first time since her grandfather had died, it was out. The pendant was shaped like a small silver bird. Not a dove. Not a peace sign. Something older. Something with a longer memory. Dante beside her saw it when the streetlight caught it. His hand closed around the grip of his weapon without him meaning to. "Mrs. Varelli." "Yes, Dante. If I am about to walk into a room that is about to become a graveyard, I would like to know now. It is not going to become a graveyard tonight." "When?" She looked at him. "Not tonight, Dante." He let out a slow breath. "Okay." "Dante." "Yes, ma'am. When we walk in, my husband will be at the front table with Sienna. He will try to make a joke at my expense when he sees me. Do not react." "Okay." "Castellano will try to ask me a question to see if I cry. Do not react." "Okay." "At some point, a man named Pavel from Brighton will walk over to my table. He will look at this pendant. He will go very pale. He will try to leave the room. Let him leave." Dante stared at her. "You're already 3 moves ahead, aren't you?" "Dante, I am 11 moves ahead. I have been 11 moves ahead for 4 years. I am tired." Something in her voice cracked, just slightly, at the word tired. It was the only crack. It was gone almost before he heard it, but he heard it. "Ma'am," he said, very quietly. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why did you stay?" She did not answer for a long time. They were crossing the bridge now. The skyline of the city was rising in front of them, all of it lit up, all of it ignorant of what was about to happen inside one particular penthouse on one particular block. "Because I was not ready," she said. "And now?" "Now he made a mistake." "What mistake?" "He let his mistress pick my dress." Dante Rocca, for the first time in almost 3 years, laughed out loud. The Castellano penthouse sat on the top 4 floors of a glass tower overlooking the harbor. It was the sort of place that looked, from the street, like money. From the inside, it looked like a museum that had been curated by a man who wanted you to be a little afraid of him. The private elevator opened directly into the grand receiving hall. The ceilings were 15 feet high. The walls were cream-colored stone. There was a quartet playing something Italian and old in the corner. There were maybe 80 people in the room. Capos, underbosses, wives, mistresses, a senator, 2 judges, a film director, a woman whose name you were not supposed to say out loud, and, in the middle of all of them, at the long table by the window, Roman Varelli. He was in a black suit. Sienna was beside him in a gold dress that caught every light in the room. He was laughing at something Castellano had said. He had not yet turned around. The room did not go quiet when Vera Varelli walked in. It went quiet when Dante Rocca, 2 steps behind her, took his hand off his sidearm, adjusted his cuff, and walked her into the room like he was walking a head of state into a cathedral. That was what made people turn, because Dante Rocca did not walk women into rooms. Dante Rocca walked killers into rooms. Conversation stopped at the edges first, then in the middle. By the time Vera had crossed half the distance to the long table, the quartet in the corner was the only sound in the penthouse, and then the violinist looked up, saw what he was seeing, and lowered his bow. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happens once in a lifetime in rooms like this. Roman turned around. He saw her. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Something moved across his face that Sienna, beside him, had never seen before. It was not anger. It was not irritation. It was something much smaller and much worse. It was the face of a man who has just understood, after 4 years, that he has been married to a woman he has never met. Sienna looked from him to the door. Her smile dropped off her face like a plate off a table, because standing in the doorway of the Castellano penthouse, in a black dress cut like an old vow and a silver bird at her throat, was not the dish rag she had dressed for a public execution. It was someone much, much older, someone who had been waiting a very long time for this party to start. Across the room near the bar, a tall, thin man with silver hair and a scar on his upper lip, a man whose passport said he was from Brighton, whose business card said he was a shipping magnate, whose actual job title could not be said out loud in polite company, lifted his glass to his mouth, saw the woman in the doorway, saw the small silver bird at her throat, and went the color of milk. He set his glass down very carefully. He did not try to leave. He had been told, a long time ago, that there was only one person in the world who wore that pendant. He had been told that person had died in the mountains 19 years ago, along with every member of her family. He had been told this by people who had been there, people who had done it themselves. He had believed them. He had built a life on believing them. From the doorway, across 80 feet of cream-colored stone and ruined silence, Vera Dane looked at him. She did not smile. She did not nod. She simply looked. And Pavel Alexandrovich Stepanov, in the penthouse of Giovanni Castellano, in the city where he had been hiding for 19 years, understood for the first time in his life that he was going to die in this building. Not tonight, but soon. And then, very slowly, Vera turned her attention away from him, toward the long table by the window, where her husband was setting down his glass with a hand that was not quite steady, and she began to walk again, and Dante Rocca, 2 steps behind her, walked with her, and the quartet in the corner did not start playing again because nobody in that room, not Castellano, not Pavel, not Sienna, not Roman, not a single one of the 80 people who had come to watch a dish rag be destroyed, had any idea, anymore, what kind of evening they had walked into. The only person in the room who did was the woman in the black dress. And she had not even begun. The distance from the elevator to the long table by the window was 63 steps. Vera had counted them once, 4 years ago, at the first family gathering Roman had ever brought her to. She had been 29 then, wearing a pale blue dress he had chosen, walking 3 paces behind him with her hands clasped in front of her like a schoolgirl at confession. Nobody had looked at her that night. They had looked through her, past her, over her shoulder for someone more important. Tonight she walked those same 63 steps alone, and every eye in the room followed her. She did not look at them. She looked at her husband. Roman had recovered from the first shock with the speed of a man who had trained himself, his whole adult life, to never be surprised by anything for longer than a breath. By the time she was halfway across the floor, his face had reset into the calm, unreadable expression he wore at business dinners, the one Dante called his negotiation face. The hand that had nearly dropped the glass was back on the table, palm flat, steady. The other hand rested on the back of Sienna's chair, but his eyes were not calm. His eyes were working. They moved over his wife like a man who had just been handed a contract written in a language he thought he spoke and was now realizing, clause by clause, that he did not speak it at all. The dress, the pendant, the way she was walking, not the small deferential steps of the woman who had left his breakfast table that morning, but the long, unhurried stride of someone who owned every inch of floor her heel came down on. He saw Dante 2 steps behind her. He saw Dante's hand, the hand that was always on the weapon at gatherings like this, hanging loose at his side. That was the detail that did it, because in 26 years of working for the Virelli family, Dante Rocca had never walked a civilian into a room of armed men without his hand on his gun. Not once. Not at a wedding. Not at a christening. Not at his own mother's funeral. Roman Varelli, whose whole life was built on reading small details in rooms full of dangerous men, registered that single empty hand and understood in a cold and absolute way that his underboss had taken aside. And it was not his. Roman. Sienna's voice, low, careful. She had felt him go still beside her. He did not answer. Roman, baby, what is she? Quiet. She shut her mouth. Vera reached the long table. Castellano, at the head, was the first to rise. Giovanni Castellano was 61 years old, built like a retired butcher, with a face that had broken noses and mended them and broken them again. He had eaten dinner at a table with 3 U.S. senators last month. He had eaten dinner at a table with the head of a Calabrian family the week before. He was not a man who stood up for wives. He stood up for Vera. He did it without thinking, the way you stand up in a church when a bride walks in. Halfway out of his chair, he seemed to realize what he was doing, and a strange, almost embarrassed look crossed his face, and then he committed to it and came the rest of the way up with a small, stiff bow. Mrs. Varelli, he said. An unexpected pleasure. Don Castellano. You honor my home. You honor my husband by inviting him. It was the correct response. It was the response of a woman who had been raised in rooms where the wrong word got your family buried in a ditch. Castellano heard it. His eyes narrowed, just a fraction. Please, he said. Sit. My wife has been asking after you. Another time, Vera said gently. Tonight I'd like to sit with my husband. A small sound came out of Sienna's throat. Not a word, just a sound. Roman's hand tightened on the back of her chair. Vera, he said, and his voice was smooth, almost warm, the voice he used when he was about to kill someone. You always sit with the wives. Tonight I think I won't. There isn't a seat. There's Sienna's. The silence at the long table became the silence of the whole room. Sienna's face went white, then red, then white again. She was a beautiful woman. She had been told she was a beautiful woman since she was 13 years old. Beauty, in her experience, had always been a weapon that worked. She opened her mouth to say something and discovered, to her horror, that she did not know what to say. Castellano, still standing, moved first. Quietly. Smoothly. Like a man pulling a knife away from a table where children were about to fight over it. Miss Marchetti, he said, perhaps you would be more comfortable at the guest table. My daughter is there. She admires your work. Sienna looked at Roman. Roman did not look at her. He was looking at his wife. And in that one full second of silence, Sienna Marchetti understood that 2 years of whispering and laughing and leaving her earrings in his car had just been erased by a single sentence from a woman she had called a dish rag 5 hours ago. She stood up. She did it badly. Her heel caught on the leg of the chair. She almost stumbled. One of Castellano's men stepped forward to steady her, and she pulled her arm away from him with more force than the situation called for. Her lipstick was slightly smeared at the corner. A small thing. Nobody would have noticed a month ago. Tonight, in this light, with this silence, every person at the long table noticed. Roman, she said, and her voice was not as steady as she wanted it to be. We'll talk later. Roman did not answer. She walked away from the table. Halfway across the floor, she passed Dante Rocca, who was still standing 2 paces behind Vera, and she hissed at him under her breath, quiet enough that only he could hear. You're on the wrong side of this, Dante. Dante did not turn his head. Miss Marchetti, he said equally quietly, and his voice was almost kind. I've been doing this since before you were born. I know exactly which side I'm on. She kept walking. Vera sat down in the chair Sienna had vacated. The quartet in the corner, which had still not resumed playing, received a small nod from Castellano and started up again, hesitantly, on a slower piece. Conversation at the other tables resumed in careful, low voices, the kind of voices people used when something had just happened that they would be talking about for the next 10 years, and they did not want to be overheard doing it. At the long table, Roman poured his wife a glass of wine. His hand was steady now. Vera, he said. Roman. What is this? Dinner. Vera. She lifted the wine, did not drink, set it back down. I was invited, Roman. You invited me. Dante reminded you this morning. You said I was going, so here I am. That is not an answer. It's the only one you're going to get at this table. He stared at her. She stared back. Something passed between them that had not passed between them in almost 4 years. It was not affection. It was not even recognition. It was the thing that had happened in Geneva at the charity gala, the first night he had seen her, when he had walked across a ballroom and asked her to dance because there was something in her face that he could not account for. He had married her, in the end, because he could not account for it. He had told himself the morning after the wedding that he had married her because her father was a diplomat in a country with loose extradition laws and a weak central government, and that was the truth, mostly. The way most things Roman Varelli told himself were true, mostly. But the other thing, the thing he could not account for, had been there that first night, and it had made him reach for her. And it was here again now, sitting 3 feet away from him in a black dress and a silver pendant he did not recognize. He was 41 years old. He had killed men for less than what his wife had just done to him in front of 60 witnesses. He picked up his own wine. "To my wife," he said quietly, and his voice carried because he wanted it to carry, because he had been in this life long enough to know that the only move available to him now was to look like he had planned this. "Who I apparently have been underestimating." A long, uneasy chorus of raised glasses around the table. Vera smiled at him. It was a wife's smile. It was very convincing. "To my husband," she said, "who is learning." She drank. He drank. Across the room, near the bar, Pavel Stepanov had still not moved. He was 64 years old. He had survived the fall of 3 regimes, 2 assassination attempts, a prison sentence in a country that no longer existed, and a knife wound in Istanbul that had left him with the limp he tried to hide. He had been drinking his 3rd vodka of the evening when Vera walked in, and the glass in his hand was still half full, and he had not remembered to set it down for almost 4 minutes now. His silver hair was damp at the temples. He had not taken his eyes off the long table by the window. A younger man came up beside him. Stefan, his nephew, officially. His head of security, actually. Stefan was 30, and he had been raised to read his uncle's face the way other men learned to read weather patterns. "Uncle." Pavel did not answer. "Uncle, your glass." Pavel looked down. He seemed surprised to find a glass in his hand. He set it carefully on the bar. "Stefan?" "Yes." "We are leaving." "Now?" "No." Pavel's voice was very soft. Stefan had to lean in to catch it. "Now would look like what it is. We will stay for 1 hour. We will make the correct faces. We will laugh in the correct places. We will leave when other men leave. When we leave, you will drive. You will not take the route we came in on. You will drive us to the house on the water, not the apartment. The house. Do you understand?" "Uncle, what?" "Stefan." "Yes." "Do you see the woman at the long table by the window?" Stefan looked back. "Varelli's wife? Her name is not Varelli." What?" "It is Diane, Vera Diane. And if it is actually her, which it should not be because she died 19 years ago in a village in the mountains along with her entire family, then she is the granddaughter of a man I was very afraid of when I was younger than you are now, and half the men in this room are going to be dead within 12 months, and I do not intend to be one of them. Do you understand me now?" Stefan had gone very pale. "Yes, uncle." "Good. Get me another vodka. Smile when you do it." Stefan signaled the bartender. Near the bar, a waiter carrying a tray of canapés glanced toward the long table by the window and thought, without knowing why, that he was glad he was not a man in a nice suit in this room tonight. At the long table, Castellano cleared his throat. "Mrs. Varelli," he said, and he was smiling, but his eyes were working almost as hard as Roman's. "Forgive an old man's curiosity. I have had the honor of your husband at my table many times. I have had the honor of you only once at his wedding. Tell me, what have you been doing with yourself all these years since?" It was a test. They all knew it was a test. Around the table, 3 wives and 2 capos and a cousin from Palermo all stopped chewing, just slightly, waiting to hear what the dish rag would say. Vera set her wine down. "A little of this," she said. "A little of that." "A little of what, specifically?" "Don Castellano." "Yes, Mrs. Varelli. You're asking me a question that is polite on the surface and not polite underneath it. I'm not offended. I would do the same in your position. But if you would like the real answer, you and I should have that conversation privately, not in front of my husband's associates and not in front of your wife's cousin from Palermo, who I notice is wearing a wire." Silence. Actual silence. The cousin from Palermo, A thin, nervous-looking man of about 35 named Enzo went rigid in his seat. His hand moved, almost involuntarily, to his chest. Castellano did not move at all. "Say that again," he said. "I don't think I need to." Castellano turned his head, very slowly, and looked at his wife's cousin. "Enzo." "Don Castellano, open your shirt." "Don Castellano, I don't—" "Enzo, open your shirt or Marco will open it for you." Marco, a square man in his 40s sitting 2 chairs down, was already rising. Enzo's hands were shaking badly now. He fumbled with the top button of his shirt, then the second, then the third. The 4th button caught. He tore it. And under the white fabric, clipped to a thin black strap across his chest, was a small matte device the size of a pack of gum, with a wire running down under his belt. 2 of Castellano's men were on him before he could stand up. They did it quietly. No shouting, no shots. Enzo was out of his chair and halfway to a service door on the far side of the room before most of the guests had realized anything was happening. The quartet in the corner played a little louder on Castellano's signal. Across the room, Pavel Stepanov looked at his nephew and made a small gesture with 2 fingers, and Stefan nodded, and they did not move. Castellano turned back to the table. He did not look at Vera immediately. He looked at Roman. Roman's face was stone. "Mrs. Varelli," Castellano said, still looking at Roman. "How did you know?" "He kept touching his chest," Vera said. "Not scratching, checking. A man only checks a spot on his body that often when he is wearing something he is not used to wearing. I saw it when we came in. Also, his shoes are wrong. A man who works for you does not wear those shoes." Castellano finally looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. Then he did something none of the men at that table had ever seen Giovanni Castellano do. He put his hand flat against his own chest, over his heart, and he gave her a small, serious nod. It was not the flirtatious gesture of a host to a pretty woman. It was the gesture a boss gave another boss when acknowledging a debt. "Mrs. Varelli," he said, "you have my gratitude. You have it tonight. You have it tomorrow. You have it for as long as I am in this chair." Don Castellano. "Yes." "I would like to ask you for something." "Ask." "I would like to speak with my husband privately, in a room in your house in 30 minutes, just the 2 of us, with Dante Rocca outside the door." Roman's hand closed around his wine glass. Castellano looked at him, then back at Vera. "My library," he said. "2nd floor, 30 minutes. Nobody will disturb you." "Thank you." "Mrs. Varelli." "Yes. Whatever you have been doing with yourself all these years, I am glad tonight that you did it." She inclined her head. He sat back down. The quartet played on. At the other end of the long table, Roman Varelli drank his wine slowly and did not say a single word for the next 27 minutes. He ate nothing. He laughed at nothing. He watched his wife take small sips of her soup, and he watched her make small, polite conversation with the wife on her left about an art exhibit he had not known she had ever heard of. And he watched a man named Pavel on the other side of the room try 3 separate times to stop looking at her and fail every time. And in the space behind his eyes, he was doing the kind of arithmetic he had not done since he was 22 years old. And the old Don had sat him down and asked him if he wanted the world or wanted to stay alive, because you could not have both. He had chosen the world then. He was no longer sure what he had chosen tonight. At 28 minutes past the hour, Vera set her spoon down, touched her napkin to her lips, rose from her chair and said quietly, "Roman." He rose with her. They walked out of the dining room together, down a long hallway hung with oil paintings of Castellano's grandfather, and up a wide marble staircase to the 2nd floor. And Dante Rocca followed 3 paces behind them, and when they reached the heavy oak door of the library, Dante stopped and put his back to the wall beside it, and crossed his arms, and did not look at them as they went in. The door closed. The library was a long, narrow room with tall windows overlooking the harbor. The rain had started again, very lightly, and the harbor lights were smeared and soft in the wet glass. There was a fireplace at one end, unlit, 2 leather chairs, a small table between them with a decanter and 2 glasses. Roman stood by the fireplace. Vera stood by the window. They did not look at each other for almost a minute. "Well," Roman said finally. "Talk." "Sit down, Roman." "I'll stand." "Sit down, please. This is going to take some time, and you are going to want to be sitting." He looked at her. Something in her voice. Not the voice of his wife. Not the voice of the woman at the breakfast table. Some third voice he had not heard before. He sat down. She crossed the room slowly and sat in the other chair, and she did not pour from the decanter, and she did not reach for his hand, which she had not done in over a year anyway, and she simply folded her hands in her lap and looked at him. "My name is Vera Dain," she said. "I know your name. You know the name on my passport. You do not know my name." He did not answer. "My grandfather's name was Iosif Dain. He was not a school teacher in a small mountain town. He was a colonel in an intelligence service in a country that does not exist anymore. When that country fell apart, he did not retire. He went into a different line of work. Private. Off the books. He built a small organization of people who used to do what he did. They specialized in information, in moving things across borders that other people could not move, in arranging certain outcomes in certain rooms when certain outcomes were required. They were not a large organization. They were not a public organization. But if you were a man in a room in Brighton or in Kiev or in Istanbul in the mid-1990s and someone said the name Iosif Dain to you, you stopped what you were doing and you listened." "Vera, let me finish, Roman." She did not raise her voice. She did not have to. He closed his mouth. "When I was 14, she said, my parents were killed. It was not an accident. It was done by a man who wanted my grandfather to stop doing what he was doing. The man succeeded, in a sense. My grandfather disappeared. He took me with him. For the next 5 years, he raised me in a series of small apartments in cities I will not name, and he taught me things a 14-year-old girl does not usually get taught. Languages, weapons, how to read a room, how to read a man, how to tell when someone is wearing a wire, how to wait. He taught me how to wait, Roman. He was very good at it." Roman's jaw was tight. "He died when I was 19. I will not tell you how. When he died, he left me the organization he had built. It was smaller by then, quieter, but it still existed. It still exists. It has existed the entire time I've been married to you." "Jesus Christ," Roman said. "Listen to me." "Vera, listen to me, Roman. I am not finished." He went quiet again. "I met you in Geneva at a charity gala 4 years ago," she said. "You did not find me. I found you. I walked into the room I knew you were going to be in, wearing a dress I knew you would notice, at an event my people had ensured you were invited to. I wanted you to ask me to dance. You asked me to dance. I wanted you to ask me to dinner the next night. You asked me to dinner the next night. I wanted you to marry me, and you married me." He stared at her. "Why?" he said. "Because the man who had my parents killed 19 years ago was doing business with your organization, through one of your people. Not you directly. You did not know. You still do not know who I mean, although I will tell you eventually, when the time is right. He has been protected by your name for almost 2 decades. I could not reach him from the outside, so I came inside. You married me to get to somebody under my protection." "Yes." 4 years. "Yes. You have been in my house for 4 years." "Yes, Roman." He stood up. He walked to the fireplace. He put one hand on the mantel. He was breathing like a man who had just climbed a flight of stairs too fast. "And tonight," he said, without turning around, "tonight was what? Tonight was the beginning. Tonight was because your mistress bought me a dress." He laughed. It was a short, ugly laugh. "A dress?" "Yes, Roman, a dress. I was not going to do this tonight. I was going to wait until spring. I had a plan. The plan required 6 more months of being your wife, of sitting at your breakfast table, of not looking Dante Rocca in the eye when he walked into a room, of not speaking to Luca about his mother, even though I have been sending his mother flowers for 2 years under another woman's name. But your mistress bought me a cheap red dress and told the stylist it was your idea, and I understood, sitting in my dressing room this afternoon, that she was not going to let me have 6 more months. She was going to end me tonight, so I ended her first. That is all." Roman turned around. "And me," he said. "What happens to me?" Vera looked at him. For the first time all night, there was something in her face that was not perfectly controlled. It was small. It was quick. It was gone almost before he saw it. But it had been there. "I have not decided yet," she said quietly. He stared at her. "You haven't decided," he said. "No. You have been in my house for 4 years and you haven't decided what happens to me." "Roman." "What?" "I did not expect to—" She stopped. She did not finish the sentence. She folded her hands tighter in her lap. What, Vera? I did not expect to spend 4 years with a man and feel nothing about him at the end of it. That is what I'm saying. I expected to feel nothing. I trained myself for almost 2 years before I met you to feel nothing. And then I lived in your house for 4 years and I watched you. And I saw the way you were with Dante and the way you were with Marta and the way you were once with a boy from the neighborhood who came to ask you for help with his sister's medical bills, and you gave him the money and you never mentioned it to anyone. And I saw the way you were with your mistress, which was ugly, Roman. And I saw the way you were with me, which was worse. And I do not know tonight what I feel about you. I only know that I have not decided. He was very still. You watched me. I watched you, Roman. I watched you for 4 years. It was my job. And the woman at breakfast, the one who didn't cry, is sitting in this chair. She is the same woman, Roman. I did not put her on. I did not take her off. I am not two women. I am one woman who has been very patient for a very long time. He came back to the chair. He did not sit. He stood in front of her, looking down at her, and she looked up at him, and neither of them said anything for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, Sienna. Yes. What were you going to do about Sienna in the spring, in your plan? Nothing, Roman. She was not important. She has been my mistress for 2 years. She was not important, Roman. She was a woman you used to feel powerful. You did not love her. She did not love you. She loved what she thought you could give her, and you liked that she was loud because the rest of your life was quiet. She was furniture with a heartbeat. My words, not hers, obviously. He almost smiled. He stopped himself. You're cold, he said. I am tired, Roman. There is a difference. What do you want from me tonight? 2 things. Tell me. The first is that in about 4 minutes, a man named Pavel is going to try to leave this party. He's going to try to leave alone, or with one nephew. I need you to have Dante quietly ensure that he does not leave alone. I need him followed, not stopped, not hurt, followed. I will tell Dante where to take him afterwards. Done? Roman. What? You said that too fast. I know. She looked at him. The second thing, she said. Yes, I'm going to go back downstairs in a few minutes. I'm going to sit at the long table with you for another hour. I'm going to smile. I'm going to be your wife. When we leave, we will leave together in the same car. When we get home, you are going to tell Sienna on the phone tonight before you go to sleep that you will not see her again. You will not be cruel. You will not be generous. You will be clear. You will tell her that anything she has in our house will be sent to her in the morning. That is it. That is what I want tonight. And after tonight, we will talk again. About what? About everything, Roman, about the man under your protection, about the 6 months I no longer have, about what you want to be now that you know what you have been married to. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Vera. Yes. Why are you telling me this? I told you, I have not decided. That is not an answer. It is the only one you are going to get tonight. She rose from her chair. She did not walk to him. She walked past him toward the door. Her hand was on the doorknob when he spoke again, without turning. In Geneva, he said. She stopped. What about it? She said quietly. The night I asked you to dance. You said yes too fast. I remember thinking it. I remember thinking, she said yes too fast. Something is wrong. And then I forgot about it. Because you were beautiful and I was drunk and I wanted to forget about it. Is that what you mean when you say you set it up? Yes, Roman. Did you mean it when you said yes? A very long pause. I do not know, she said, and her voice was not steady. I have thought about that for 4 years. I do not know. She opened the door. Dante was in the hallway, exactly where she had left him, arms folded, back against the wall. He looked at her. She nodded, once. He nodded back. They went downstairs, and Vera Dane sat at the long table next to her husband, and she smiled, and she made small, polite conversation with Castellano's wife for the next 53 minutes. And across the room, Pavel Stepanov rose to his feet at exactly the moment she had predicted, and made his way quietly toward the elevators with his nephew Stefan 2 steps behind him. And as Pavel was reaching for the elevator button, Dante Roca appeared at his elbow, smiling a friendly smile, and said something quiet in Pavel's ear, and Pavel went, for the second time that night, the color of milk. And he got into the elevator, and Stefan got into the elevator, and two of Dante's men got into the elevator with them, and the doors closed, and Pavel Alexandrovich Stepanov did not go to the house on the water, after all. At the long table, Vera Dane lifted her wine glass and took a small sip. Her husband, beside her, watched her do it, and a small muscle moved in his jaw, and he did not look away. The drive home was the longest 40 minutes of Roman Varelli's life. He did not speak. Vera did not speak. Luca, up front at the wheel, had both hands locked on the leather at 10 and 2, and his eyes kept darting to the rear-view mirror in small, involuntary flickers, the way a man checks to see if a fire in another room has gotten closer. Dante was not with them. Dante had stayed behind, at the Castellano penthouse, on an errand that had not been discussed out loud and did not need to be. The city was wet and dark through the tinted windows. Roman sat with his left arm along the back of the seat, his hand half an inch away from his wife's shoulder, and the whole ride home he could not make himself close that half inch, and he could not make himself pull the arm away. Vera sat with her hands folded in her lap exactly the way she had folded them in the library. She did not look at her husband. She looked out the window at the wet streets, and her face in the reflection was the face he had seen for 4 years across a breakfast table, calm, still, emptied of anything a man could accuse her of. And for the first time in 4 years, Roman understood that the emptiness was not emptiness. It was discipline. It was the face of a woman who had been told, as a girl, that if she let anything show on her face in the wrong room, she would die. He thought about the girl she must have been. 14 years old, someone in a black coat knocking on a door in a city she loved. He tried to picture it and could not. He had killed men for less than what had been done to her family, in his own ways, in his own rooms, over the years. He had built a life on being the man in the black coat. The car turned off the parkway onto the long, private road that led to the compound. Vera spoke for the first time since they had left the penthouse. Roman. Yes. When we get inside, you will go into your study and you will call her. I know. You will do it tonight. Not tomorrow. Not in the morning. I know, Vera. I am not asking. I know you are not asking. She turned her head and looked at him. In the dim interior of the car, her eyes were almost black. There was no triumph in them. There was no satisfaction. There was something that looked almost like sorrow, which was the last thing he had expected to see tonight, and which, in some deep and unreasonable place inside him, cut a little. I'm not doing this to hurt you, she said. You are doing it because you can. No, Roman. Then why? Because she would kill me in my sleep within a month, if you let her live in your life after tonight. And I have not survived 19 years in order to die to a woman who buys cheap dresses. He looked at her for a long time. Then he said quietly, You think she'd have the nerve? I think she already has the nerve. I think she has been planning it for months. I think she has a man in your house who takes her money. I will tell you which one tomorrow. Vera. Yes, Roman. You have been sleeping under my roof for 4 years, and you have been telling me which of my men take bribes from my mistress. When were you going to share? When it was useful. When it was useful to you. Yes, Roman, when it was useful to me. I did not marry you to be of service. He almost laughed. He did not. He looked out his own window. The headlights of the Mercedes swept across the wrought iron gates of the compound as Luca slowed for the guards. Roman lifted 2 fingers off the leather of the seat, a gesture the near of the 2 men recognized instantly, and the gate swung open, and the car rolled through. Vera. Yes. Which one? Which one what? You said you'd tell me tomorrow. Tell me now. There was a long pause. Roman. Vera. Are you sure you want to know tonight? Yes. Fine, it is Nico. A beat. Nico. Yes. Nico. My nephew. Your cousin's son, Roman. Not your nephew. You call him your nephew because you raised him after his father died, and I understand that, but he is not your nephew, and he has been taking money from your mistress for over a year in exchange for certain small pieces of information. Nothing big. Yet. But he is 26 years old, and he is in debt to a man he should not be in debt to, and your mistress has been the one paying the debt down for him. Roman did not answer. The Mercedes pulled up in front of the main house. Luca killed the engine. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Roman reached across his wife, slowly, and opened her door from the inside, which was a thing he had not done in close to 3 years. Vera did not thank him. She got out of the car. He got out after her. They walked up the stone steps to the tall double doors together, and Marta was already there, in the foyer, in her slippers and her nightgown, because Marta always waited up whether anyone asked her to or not. Marta took one look at them and did not say a word. She did a small strange thing instead. She bowed her head, not deeply, just a small tilt, the kind of small tilt she had given 40 years ago to Roman's mother, when his mother was still the lady of this house. It was a gesture Marta had never given to Vera before. Roman saw it. Vera saw it. Marta saw that they had both seen it, and she lifted her head, and there was a tiny, nearly invisible smile on her old mouth, and she said softly, "Welcome home, Mrs. Varelli. Is there anything you need tonight?" "Thank you, Marta. No." "Mr. Varelli?" "No, Marta. Go to bed." "Yes, sir." She went. Roman stood at the foot of the grand staircase. Vera stood 3 feet away from him. Her hand was on the banister. The light from the chandelier overhead fell on the silver pendant at her throat, and the small bird seemed to catch the light and throw it back. And Roman, who had been raised by a devout mother and was not devout himself, had the irrational feeling that there was something about that pendant that was older than it looked and did not like him very much. "Roman." "Yes." "Call her." He took out his phone. Vera turned her head slightly so as not to watch him dial, which was a small kindness she did not owe him and gave him anyway. He registered the kindness. He filed it away. He walked down the hall to his study, and he closed the door behind him, and he sat down behind the heavy desk that had been his father's desk and his grandfather's desk before that, and he put the phone on speaker and he dialed. She picked up on the second ring. "Roman." Her voice was wrong already, too bright, too fast. "Roman, baby, I was just about to call you. What was that tonight? What the hell was that? She came in like a... What is wrong with her, Roman? Are you okay? Did she... Sienna." "Yes." "Stop talking." A beat of silence. "Roman, what's... Stop talking, Sienna. I'm going to say something to you, and I'm going to say it once. Okay? I'm not going to see you again." Silence. A long silence, then very softly, "What?" "You heard me. Roman, anything of yours that is in this house will be sent to your apartment tomorrow, by noon. It will be packed by Marta, and it will be sent by one of my men. If something is missing and you think we kept it, you will call Dante, and Dante will look for it, and if we have it, we will return it. You will not come to this house. You will not come to the compound. You will not call me. You will not text me. If you need to communicate with me, you will do it through Dante. Do you understand?" Her breathing had changed. He could hear it through the phone. "Roman, is she there? Is she listening to this?" "No." "Roman, she is not listening, Sienna. She does not need to listen. She is in the house. She is going to bed." "Did she tell you to do this?" He did not answer. "Roman, did she tell you to do this?" "I'm doing it, Sienna. That's what matters." "Roman, I love you." He closed his eyes. "No, you don't." "Roman, you don't, Sienna, and I don't love you, and we both know it, and I'm not going to fight with you about it tonight because I am tired and because there is nothing to fight about. You were good to me, and I was good to you, and now it is over." "You bastard." "Yes, you bastard, Roman. After 2 years? After 2 years on the phone because your wife... Sienna." "What?" "There is one other thing." "What?" "Nico." The change on the other end of the line was instant. It was the kind of change a cop hears in a suspect's voice in an interrogation room, the small, unbreathing second between a question and a lie. "What about Nico?" "You know what about Nico, Sienna." "Roman, I don't..." "Sienna, do not. Do not insult me. Not tonight. Whatever Nico was to you, whatever arrangement you had with him, whatever he told you, it is over tonight. You will not call him. You will not see him. If I find out that you have contacted him after this call, or that he has contacted you, the terms of this conversation change. Do you understand me?" A very long pause. "Yes," she said quietly. "Good. Goodbye, Sienna." "Roman." "What?" "She is going to regret this." He hung up. He put the phone face down on the desk. He sat there, in the dark, with his hands flat on the wood, for almost 10 minutes. He did not turn on the lamp. He did not pour a drink. He sat and he breathed, and somewhere in the middle of that 10 minutes he realized he was more tired than he had been in 20 years. Not physically tired, a different kind. The kind of tired that accumulates in the walls of the heart, slowly, for decades, and only makes itself known on the night when something happens that is too big to hold up. After 10 minutes, he got up. He walked out of the study. Vera was not on the stairs. She was not in the foyer. He went up the stairs to their bedroom, and the door was closed, but a thin line of light showed underneath, and he stood in the hallway for a while, looking at that line of light, and then he did not knock. He went to the guest room at the end of the hall. He slept in his clothes. Across town, at that same hour, Sienna Marchetti stood in the middle of her living room in a gold dress that was now a mistake, and she screamed once into the quiet of her apartment. Then she stopped screaming. She walked into the kitchen. She poured herself a large glass of white wine. She drank it standing up. She poured another. She stood at the window looking out at the harbor, and she cried for about 4 minutes, which was an honest 4 minutes, because she had actually, in her own way, loved him, or loved the life he gave her, which had felt very close to the same thing for a long time. Then she stopped crying, because she was not a woman who cried for long. She put the wine down. She picked up her phone. She did not call Nico. She was not stupid. She knew Roman would have someone watching that number tonight. She opened a different app instead, an encrypted one, and she sent a message to a man whose name did not appear in her contacts, and who she had not spoken to in over a year, and the message said, only, "I need to see you, tomorrow. The place in the park." He did not answer, but the message was marked red within 90 seconds. Sienna Marchetti finished her wine in the dark, and she went to bed, and she did not sleep. In the Varelli compound, Vera lay on her side in the bed she had mostly slept in alone for 4 years, and she stared at the wall, and she did not sleep either, although she was better at looking like she was sleeping than Sienna was. At some point around 3 in the morning, she heard her husband come up the stairs. She heard him stop at their door. She heard him not knock. She heard him go down the hall to the guest room, and she heard the door close, and she understood, in the particular way she understood everything, that he had given her the bed tonight not as a courtesy, but as a confession. He did not know yet what he was allowed to ask for. He did not know yet whether he still had a wife, or whether he had spent the last 4 years sleeping across the hall from a stranger who had been paid to tolerate him. He was not wrong to be unsure. She was not sure either. She pressed her fingers against the small silver bird at her throat, and she did what her grandfather had taught her to do on the nights when there was no answer at the end of the thinking. She breathed, in, out. The morning was gray and cold. Marta came up at 7 with coffee on a tray, and Vera was already dressed, and Marta set the tray down on the little table by the window and said quietly, "Ma'am, there is a gentleman downstairs who would like to see you." "Who?" "Mr. Roca, ma'am." "Send him to my sitting room." "Yes, ma'am." "Marta." "Yes, ma'am." "Send coffee in for him as well, the strong one, not the one we serve the guests." A very small smile moved across Marta's face. "Yes, ma'am." The sitting room was on the second floor, in a wing Roman almost never used. It had tall windows facing the east lawn, and a small fireplace, and 2 old armchairs. And it had been Roman's mother's sitting room, and nobody had been invited into it in 15 years. Vera had not asked Roman for permission to use it. She had simply started sitting in it, about a year into the marriage, when she had realized that nothing in the main house was going to be hers unless she quietly took it. Dante was already standing by the window when she came in. He turned when he heard her. "Mrs. Varelli?" "Dante, sit." He sat. He looked tired. His jaw was rough. He had not shaved. "Pavel?" she said. "At the safe house on the north side. Alive. Alive. Unharmed. Nephew is with him. They are not speaking." "Good. Mrs. Varelli, before you go on." "Yes, I called a man last night, after, on a line that is not supposed to be used for this kind of thing. I said a certain name to him, a name I should not know. He called me back at 4 in the morning. Yes, Dante. He told me that if that name is the one I think it is, then I should do exactly what you tell me to do for the next 72 hours. And I should not ask questions, and I should not tell my boss anything that you do not tell me to tell him. And he said that if I do this, then in 3 days I can go back to being the underboss of an organization that still exists. And he said that if I do not do this, then in 3 days the organization I work for might not exist at all. And I do not think he was exaggerating. She looked at him. "Dante." "Ma'am, do you want to keep being the underboss of an organization that still exists?" He was quiet for a long moment. I am 53 years old, you see, he said. I've been doing this since I was 12. My wife is in a house in Florida because it was safer for her to be in a house in Florida than in a house with me. My son is a lawyer in Chicago, and he does not take my calls. I have killed 7 men in my life, 6 of whom I do not regret, and 1 of whom I regret every morning when I get out of bed. I have been loyal to Roman since the day his father put his hand on my head at the kitchen table and told me I was family. I have been loyal to his father since the day his father pulled me out of a basement where 2 men had tied my hands to a radiator because my own father did not have the $3,000 that he owed. I am not a good man, Mrs. Varelli. I am not pretending to be. But I am a loyal man, and I am asking you, honestly, one time, so I do not have to ask again, are you going to destroy Roman? She did not answer right away. Dante. Yes. I told him last night that I had not decided. I know. He told me this morning. At 6. He came down into the kitchen in yesterday's clothes, and he said those words to me, and he drank a glass of water, and he went back upstairs. And I have known him for 40 years, and I have never seen his hand shake the way it was shaking this morning. I am not going to destroy him, Dante. But you could. Yes, you could destroy him tomorrow if you wanted to. I could have destroyed him last night, Dante. I chose not to. He nodded, slowly. Okay, he said. I want something from him, Dante. I did not know until last night that I wanted it. But I want it. And I do not know yet if he is capable of giving it to me. That is what I have not decided. That is the only thing I have not decided. What is it, ma'am? If I can ask. She was quiet for a long time. I want him to be better than his father, she said, finally. Dante closed his eyes. He opened them. Ma'am. Yes. His father was a monster. I know, Dante. You are asking for a lot. I know that too. Okay. Dante. Yes. Pavel. Yes. In 1 hour, I am going to go to the safe house on the north side. You're going to drive me. Roman is going to come with us. You will tell him in the next 30 minutes that I have asked him to come. You will not tell him why. He will come. When we arrive at the safe house, you will bring Pavel to the front room. You will bring the nephew to a different room on a different floor. You will leave us, the 3 of us, me, Pavel, and my husband, alone in the front room for 1 hour. You will stand outside the door. You will not listen. If you hear 1 gunshot, you will come in. If you hear 2 gunshots, you will not come in, and you will send someone to burn the building down. Dante stared at her. Ma'am? Yes. There is not going to be 1 gunshot. There might be? Mrs. Varelli, with respect, if there is going to be a gunshot, I would prefer that I be the one to pull the trigger. No, Dante. You have pulled enough triggers in your life. He looked at her for a very long moment. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am. Yes. If you do not mind my asking, who was it? Who in our organization has been protecting this man, Pavel, all these years? Dante. Yes. I think you know. He went still. Ma'am? No. No, not him. Yes, Dante. Ma'am. That is the capo of the 3rd Street crew. He has been with Roman for 20 years. He has been with Roman's father before that. He is I know what he is, Dante. I have known for a long time. He is the man who arranged for my parents to be killed. He was not in the room. He hired Pavel to do it. Pavel hired the 3 men who did it. The capo was paid by a third party, which I have traced, although that does not matter tonight. The man who actually gave the order is dead. He died in a car accident in Vienna in 2009. He was not important. He was a middleman. The 2 men I need are Pavel and the capo. Pavel is in a safe house on the north side. The capo is sitting down to breakfast in a diner on 3rd Street right now. He is eating eggs. Dante was looking at her like she was something he did not entirely understand. Mrs. Varelli. Yes, Dante. How long have you known? 11 months. And you have been eating at the same table as this man. Dante. Ma'am, for the last 11 months I have been eating at a table with my husband, who was not the man who killed my parents, and who did not know that the man who killed my parents was one of his own capos. I have been able to do this because I am a patient woman. Please do not mistake my patience for coldness. My grandfather died in my arms, Dante. I was 19. He had been shot in the neck. I held a towel against his throat for 40 minutes while the blood went through it. 40 minutes, Dante. And when he finally stopped breathing, I went into the bathroom and I was sick for 2 hours. And then I washed my face, and I packed a bag, and I went to a train station, and I did not cry again for 11 years. So please, do not mistake me for a woman who does not feel. I am a woman who has been choosing, very carefully, what to feel, and when, for a long time. Dante did not answer. She stood up. 1 hour, she said. The safe house. Yes, ma'am. She walked out. Dante sat in his dead boss's mother's sitting room for almost 10 minutes after she was gone, and then he crossed himself, which he had not done in 30 years, and he went to find Roman. Roman was in the kitchen when Dante found him. He was sitting at the small table in the corner, the one nobody ate at, and there was an untouched plate of eggs in front of him, and a cup of coffee that had gone cold, and he was not looking at either of them. He was looking out the window at the east lawn, where a groundskeeper was walking slowly along the line of the boxwood hedges with a pair of shears in his hand. Roman. Dante. She wants you to come with us this morning. Where? To the safe house. Roman turned his head. Why? She did not tell me why, Roman. She did not tell you why. No, Roman. Roman laughed. It was the short, ugly laugh from the night before. Since when does my wife give orders and you don't ask why? Since last night, Roman. Roman looked at him for a long moment. Dante, do you know what is going on? I know some of it. Do you know more of it than I do? Yes, Roman. A beat. Are you going to tell me? No, Roman. She is going to tell you. That is why she is taking you this morning. Roman pushed the plate of eggs away. Dante? Yes. I have known you for 40 years. Yes, Roman. If I ask you right now to tell me what is happening in my own house, if I ask you as your boss, what will you do? Dante did not answer for a moment. Then he said very quietly, Roman, I love you. I have loved you since you were a boy. I carried you out of the water when you were 8 and you fell off your uncle's boat and everybody else was too drunk to notice. I buried your father. I held your mother's hand when she was dying in the East Wing because you could not make yourself go in there. You are my family. I have no other family that still answers the phone. Dante. Let me finish, Roman. Roman shut his mouth. It had been a long time since Dante had told him to do that. Your wife has been in this house for 4 years, Dante said. In those 4 years, I have run 3 background checks on her because you asked me to, and twice on my own because something did not sit right. All 5 checks came back clean. 2 weeks ago, I made a phone call. I made it on a whim. I should not have made it. I do not want to tell you who I called. I will tell you eventually if you need me to, but I'm asking you this morning, as your friend, not to make me tell you today. Because of that phone call, I learned something about your wife. I did not tell you because I did not know what to do with it. I sat on it for 11 days. Last night she walked into the Castellano penthouse wearing a pendant, and when I saw the pendant, I knew she had known the whole time that I had made the phone call. She waited to see if I would tell you. I did not tell you. She did not punish me for that. She is not, I think, a woman who punishes people for small failures. But Roman, if you ask me now, as your boss, to tell you what I know, I will tell you. And then, after I tell you, she will know I told you, because she knows everything in this house, and she will adjust her plan, and I do not know what her plan will become, and I do not know if, at the end of her adjusted plan, you will still be alive. So I am asking you, one time, as your friend, get in the car. Come with us. Let her tell you herself. Let her show you, whatever she is, whatever she has been, whatever she wants. Let her be the one to show you, because I think, if you let her, you will still have a wife when the sun goes down, and if you do not, you will not. Roman did not move for almost a full minute. Then he picked up the cold coffee, and he drank the rest of it in one long swallow, and he set the cup down, and he said, All right, Dante. Thank you, Roman. Dante. Yes, Roman. Am I a fool? Dante did not answer for a moment. Then he said, No, Roman. A fool does not know what he has been married to. You are something else. You are a man who is about to find out. They got in the car. Vera was already in the back seat. She was wearing a simple dark coat over a gray dress, and her hair was pulled back and the silver bird was at her throat again, and she was looking out the window. She did not greet her husband when he got in. She reached out, without looking at him, and touched the back of his hand with 2 fingers, just for a second. Then she put her hand back in her lap. Roman closed his eyes. He opened them. Luca pulled the Mercedes out through the gates, and they drove north, and the city thinned into warehouses, and the warehouses thinned into small industrial lots, and the lots thinned into a stretch of old shipping buildings along the water where nobody looked at anyone too closely. The safe house was a narrow 4-story building with the windows painted black on the lower 2 floors. There were 2 of Dante's men in the alley when they pulled up. There were 2 more on the roof. Dante got out first. He opened Vera's door. She got out. She waited. Roman got out after her. He walked around the front of the car until he was standing beside his wife on the cracked sidewalk. The harbor air was cold and smelled like salt and diesel. A gull was screaming somewhere above the water. He looked at her, and she looked at him. And for the first time since Geneva, they were standing in the same room, and both of them knew exactly what the other one was. Vera. Yes. Before we go in. Yes, Roman. There is a man in there. Yes. And he did something? Yes, Roman, he did. To you. To my family. Is that why we have been married for 4 years? She was quiet. Vera. That is the reason I came into your life, Roman. That is not the reason I have stayed. I told you that last night, and I meant it. He nodded once, slowly. Okay, he said. Okay? Okay. Let's go in. He offered her his arm. She looked at it. She took it. And Roman Varelli and his wife walked into the safe house together, past Dante Rocca, who stepped aside and closed the door behind them. And for a very long minute, the only sound on that cracked sidewalk was the scream of the gull above the water and the slow, patient click of Dante Rocca's lighter as he stepped away from the door and lit his first cigarette of the day and prepared to wait and to listen and to count the gunshots. The front room of the safe house smelled like old coffee and older cigarettes. There was a long wooden table in the middle of it, scarred with the small burn rings of 40 years of other men's cigarettes, and there was a single overhead bulb that buzzed, and there were 4 chairs. 3 of them were empty. The 4th one held Pavel Stepanov. His hands were not tied. That had been Vera's instruction. She had told Dante on the phone at 4 in the morning that a man who came to this meeting in restraints could not answer her questions honestly because a man in restraints told you only what he thought would get the restraints off. Pavel was to be unharmed, unrestricted, and entirely clear on the fact that nothing standing between him and the door would physically stop him from leaving. Nothing except the understanding that the door did not lead anywhere he wanted to go. He had understood. He was sitting very straight when Vera and Roman came in, with his hands folded on the table in front of him, and he had the carefully neutral face of a man who had sat across from worse in his life and survived. The silver hair was damp at the temples, again, although the room was cool. He did not look at Roman. He looked at Vera. Vera Yosifovna. He said it the old way, the way a man had said her name once, in a room a long time ago, in a different country. She had not heard that form of her name in 19 years. She did not flinch when she heard it. Pavel, you are alive. I am alive. For how long have you been alive? The whole time, Pavel. He closed his eyes briefly. Yes, he said. That is what I thought. Of course. Of course. Roman pulled out the chair at the head of the table and sat. He did it without looking at either of them. He set his hands flat on the wood. Vera sat in the chair to his right. She did not touch him. Pavel was at the other end. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Roman said, Pavel, Mr. Virelli, you know me. I have known you for a long time, Mr. Virelli. You have not known me. That was intentional, on both our parts. Explain that. I have been, for some years, a person who does occasional work for one of your capos. Small work. Shipping things. Routing things. The capo preferred that my name not reach your ears because the work I did for him was not the kind of work he included in his reports. I was, in a sense, off the books. So, I knew you. You did not know me. And now this morning, we know each other. Roman looked at his wife. Vera nodded, very slightly. Go on, Roman said. Pavel took a breath. He had both hands on the table still, palms flat, and Vera noticed that the hands were steady. He was frightened. He was not concealing that he was frightened, but the hands were steady, because he had been frightened in rooms for 40 years, and he had learned a long time ago that if you let the fear into your hands, the fear would kill you before the man at the other end of the table did. "Vera Yosifovna," he said. "Yes. Before we speak of 19 years ago, I would like to speak of now, of last night, of what you wore." "Speak." "The bird?" "Yes." "You are wearing it because you wanted me to see it. You were telling me, in that room, in front of those men, that you knew who I was. That you had known who I was, perhaps, for a long time. You were telling me that you had decided it was time." "Yes, Pavel. May I ask why now?" "My husband's mistress bought me a cheap dress." A short, surprised laugh escaped him. He pressed his lips together immediately, as if ashamed of it, but it had gotten out. "Vera Yosifovna, that is not an answer." "It is half an answer." "And the other half?" She looked at him for a long moment. "The other half is that 2 weeks ago, Dante Roca made a phone call. He called a man in an agency in a country I will not name. He asked about my grandfather, and when he asked, the man on the other end of the phone did what he was trained to do, which was to send a small, quiet signal up a quiet chain. That signal reached me in a roundabout way, 3 days later. It told me that my husband's underboss had begun to suspect. I did not know, at that moment, what Dante would do with his suspicion. I assumed he would tell my husband. If my husband had been told, then I would have had to act within hours. Dante did not tell him, which surprised me, and which I did not understand until last night, when I understood that Dante is a man who chooses very carefully when to open his mouth. But I could not count on continued silence. So my 6 months became 2 weeks, and my 2 weeks became last night. When the dress arrived this afternoon, it was only the last stone falling onto a scale that had been tipping for 11 days. Pavel was very still. "You should have killed Dante Roca," he said softly, "the moment you knew he had made the phone call. That would have been the instinct of my grandfather. Yes, it is not mine." "Clearly." "Pavel." "Yes." "Do you know why you are at this table?" "I know why, Vera Yosifovna." "Tell me." He took another breath. "In the autumn of the year you were 14, he said, I accepted a contract. The contract was for 2 people. It was not for the child in the house. The child was to be left. The contract was paid by a middleman, a man named Sokolov. Sokolov was the broker. He had been hired by another party, whose name he did not tell me at the time, but who I later learned was a capo of the Virelli family. The same capo I have been doing small work for these last few years, which is a grim joke that I do not expect anyone in this room to laugh at. The target of the contract was your grandfather. Your parents were not the target. Your grandfather was the target. But your grandfather was not, that week, in the house. Your parents were. And the men I had hired, 3 men, I will give you the names in writing. All 3 of them are still alive, 2 are in Germany, 1 is in Cyprus. The men I had hired were told that if the grandfather was not present, the parents would be acceptable. It was, in the terms of the contract, a message. The message was, "We can reach you." The message was intended to drive your grandfather out of hiding. It succeeded, in a sense. He did come out of hiding, eventually. But he did not come out to the people who hired me. He came out to build you. And now, 19 years later, you are here, and I am here, which is, as I say, a grim joke. He stopped. He looked down at his hands on the table. I did not pull the trigger, Vera Yosifovna. I want to say that. But I also want to say that it does not matter. I arranged it. I profited from it. I have carried the knowledge of it for 19 years. There is not a week that I have not thought about your mother's face. I did not know her. I saw her photograph once. I did not need to know her. I am a man with many sins, Vera Yosifovna, but I am a man who can count. I know what I did. He looked up. I am not asking you for mercy. I know that, Pavel. I am telling you what I did because you deserve to hear it from my own mouth. I know that too. What I would ask, if I were permitted to ask for one thing, is for my nephew, Stefan, the boy upstairs. He did not know. He was 11 years old when it happened. He has worked for me for 6 years. He has not killed anyone. He has done some things he should not have done, but he has not killed anyone. I would ask that whatever happens in this room, in the next hour, does not happen to him. Vera did not answer for a long moment. Then she said, Pavel. Yes. Stefan will walk out of this building in 1 hour. He will walk out alone. A car will be waiting for him. He will be driven to an airport. He will get on a plane. He will fly to a city I have already chosen. When he arrives in that city, he will be met by a woman who works for me. She will give him a set of papers, a sum of money, and a single piece of advice. The papers and the money will allow him to begin a life in which he is not your nephew anymore. The advice will be that he should take this offer, because if he does not, the next offer will not be made by me. He will take it. He is a sensible boy. That is my answer to your question about Stefan. Domaisekis. Pavel closed his eyes. A small tremor went through his hands. Thank you, he said, almost whispering. Pavel. Yes. The other question. Yes. The Capo, 3rd Street. Ah. Pavel opened his eyes. He looked at Roman for the first time since Roman had sat down. Mr. Virelli, he said. Pavel. You are about to be told something that you did not know. I am aware of that. I am going to tell you that one of your own capos hired a man to kill another man's family 19 years ago for reasons which had nothing to do with your organization and which had everything to do with a private business arrangement that this capo had on the side with a man in Vienna who is now dead. The capo was not acting on your father's orders. The capo did not inform your father. Your father would not, I believe, have approved. I say this not to protect the capo, but to be accurate. Go on. For the past 11 years, this capo has also been taking a monthly payment from a bank account, which is not connected to your organization. The account is registered in a shell company whose beneficial owner after several layers is a man in Odessa. That man in Odessa is a competitor of yours. He has been paying your capo for 11 years. He has received in exchange small pieces of information. Shipping routes, names of couriers, schedules of certain meetings. Nothing that has yet crippled your organization. Everything that would, in aggregate, eventually allow him to. Roman's hand had gone white around the edge of the table. You are telling me, he said slowly, that my 3rd Street capo has been selling you to a man in Odessa for 11 years. Yes, that is what I am telling you. I have records. I have the account numbers. I have 3 wire transfers. I will give them to you before I leave this room. They are the price of my nephew. Pavel. Yes, Mr. Virelli. Why have you not brought this to me before? Because, Mr. Virelli, I was the one who killed your wife's parents, and I could not walk into your house. Roman did not answer. For a long minute, he did not move at all. His hand stayed white on the table. His face stayed flat. And Vera, who had seen her husband rage, and who had seen her husband go cold, and who had seen her husband laugh with his head thrown back at a joke Dante had told him about a priest in a basement, Vera had never, in 4 years, seen the face he was wearing now. It was not rage. It was not calculation. It was the face of a man who had been raised to believe that the walls of a particular building were load-bearing, and who had just discovered in a single sentence that they were not walls at all, only painted cardboard, and that the weight of his entire life had been resting for 20 years on a floor that had been quietly rotting underneath him the whole time. Vera, he said, finally. Yes. You have known this for 11 months. Yes. You have sat across from this man in my dining room. He has eaten at my table. He has laughed at my jokes. Yes, Roman. You have let him eat at my table. Roman. You have let him sit there, knowing what he did. Roman, listen to me. She reached out. She did not take his hand. She put her hand flat on the table beside his, not touching, close enough that he could feel the warmth of it if he chose to. If I had moved against him 11 months ago, she said, without preparing the ground, your organization would have split. His crew would have demanded a reason. I did not have a reason they would accept. You would have had to choose, in public, between a capo who had been with your father and a wife you barely noticed. You would have chosen him. I would have been out of the house by the end of the week, and probably out of a pulse by the end of the month. You would not have known what he was. He would have remained, and he would have kept taking that money from Odessa, and in 3 or 4 years your organization would have been eaten from inside. I did not have the standing to move against him. I have been, for 11 months, acquiring the standing. Last night was the standing. Tonight, when we leave this room, I have it. Now I can move. That is why I waited. Not because I was cold, because I was correct. He stared at her. You have been running an operation, he said quietly, inside my organization, for 4 years. Yes, Against me? No, Roman. Alongside you, without your knowledge, not the same thing. It feels the same. I know it does. I am telling you that it is not. He was quiet. Then he said, Pavel. Yes, Mr. Varelli. The records. In my left breast pocket, Mr. Varelli. A folded envelope, if I may reach for it. Reach for it. Pavel reached slowly into his jacket. He took out a thin white envelope, folded once. He set it on the table. He pushed it, with 2 fingers, down the scarred wood toward Roman. Roman did not pick it up. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he said, without looking up, Vera. Yes. Is what is in this envelope all of it, all of the evidence? There are copies, Roman. I have copies. Dante has a copy in a lockbox. A man in a city in Europe has a copy. A lawyer in another city has a copy. The copies exist because I am a cautious woman. But the envelope on the table in front of you contains the originals and the most legible copies of the wire transfers and the bank numbers. Yes, that is all of it. And if I set this envelope on fire right now, you would be setting on fire the only piece of paper that connects 3rd Street to Odessa in a way the other capos will accept as authentic. He did not move. A full minute passed. Then he picked up the envelope, and he opened it, and he read. He read for a long time. He was a slow reader, the way a lot of men in his life were slow readers, having learned to read late and mostly from the backs of ledger books. When he finished the first page, he set it face down and read the second. When he finished the second, he set it face down and read the third. There were 5 pages total. When he set the 5th page down, he put both hands flat on the table again, and he closed his eyes, and he did not open them for almost 30 seconds. When he opened them, he looked at Pavel. Pavel. Yes, Mr. Varelli. You killed my wife's parents. Yes, Mr. Varelli. Look at me. Yes, Mr. Varelli. I am a man who has killed people's parents. I know, Mr. Varelli. I am a man who is going to, until about 16 hours ago, do something similar to this woman sitting next to me, eventually, when her usefulness as a wife had expired because I was raised by a man who would have done it, and because I assumed without thinking about it that I was supposed to be the same kind of man he was. Do you know what I'm saying? I know what you are saying, Mr. Varelli. I am saying that I am not in a position to kill you for what you did. Pavel did not answer. Roman looked at his wife. Vera. Yes. Tell me what you want. She did not answer right away. She looked at Pavel, and Pavel looked back at her, and something passed between them that was not forgiveness, but also was not what Pavel had expected to find in the eyes of Iosif Dain's granddaughter across a table from him after 19 years. Pavel, she said. Yes, Vera Yosifovna. You are going to walk out of this building in 3 hours. You're going to be driven to a different airport from your nephew. You are going to fly to a city that I have chosen, which is not the city I chose for him. You will not see him again. You will not contact him again. If you do, the agreement we are making at this table ends, and a very old file with my name on it, which currently sits unopened in a drawer in a building in a city I will not name, is opened, and things happen to you which I do not need to describe. Do you understand? I understand, Vera Iosifovna. In the city you are flying to, a woman will meet you. She will give you papers and money. Less money than Stefan is getting, because your need is different. You will live quietly. You will not return to this country. You will not return to the country of your birth. You will die in 10 or 20 years of something ordinary, in a small apartment alone, and you will not speak of any of this to anyone in between. Do you understand? I understand. Those are my conditions. They are generous. They are what they are. They are not generous. They are the result of arithmetic. The arithmetic is that if I kill you, I become the granddaughter my grandfather was trying, in his last 5 years, not to raise. I have been, for 19 years, trying to be someone he would recognize. He would not recognize a woman who killed an old man across a table. He would recognize a woman who used the old man. You are being used, Pavel. That is not mercy. It is use. Please do not mistake it for mercy, because I am not a woman who gives mercy, and it insults me when people suggest that I have. I will not mistake it, Vera Iosifovna. Good. She turned to her husband. Roman. Yes. The capo. He was quiet for a long moment. I want to do it, he said. I know you do. I want to do it personally. Roman. Vera If you do it personally, you will lose 4 of your other capos within a week. They will not accept a man who kills another capo with his own hand without a sit-down. You know this. You are not thinking. You are in shock. I understand. I'm going to tell you what we are going to do, and you are going to do it because it is the correct thing, and tomorrow morning you will be grateful that we did it this way. And in 6 months you will understand that we did it this way because you were still, on this morning, the man you did not want to be anymore. He looked at her. Keep talking. Tonight, 6 o'clock. You will call a sit-down of the capos. You will call it at the house. You will not say why. They will come. Dante will call 3rd Street directly and tell him that you are furious about a shipment that went wrong last week and that he is expected to explain himself. 3rd Street will come. He will come because not coming is worse than coming. When he arrives, he will be seated at the head of the table, in your chair, which you will have vacated. You will not be in the room. I will be in the room. Dante will be in the room. The other 3 capos will be in the room. I will place this envelope on the table in front of him. He will read it. He will try 3 things in sequence. First, he will deny it. Then he will claim it was authorized by your father before he died. Then he will offer to pay. None of these will work, because the other 3 capos, by this point, will have seen the wire transfers, and they will not allow him to walk out of the house on their watch. They will handle it themselves. Not you. Them. That is how the organization survives. You will be in your study. You will be calling Marta in about her son's engagement party, which is on Sunday. You will not have heard anything. You will not have ordered anything. When they come to you after to tell you what has happened, you will be surprised, and you will be sorry, and you will be a little angry that it was done without your consent. Do you understand? He was looking at her with the kind of slow, stunned recognition of a man who has just realized he is not the smartest person at the table, has not been the smartest person at the table for some time, and might never have been. Yes, he said. I understand. Good. Vera. Yes. Where did you learn to do this? My grandfather, Roman, I told you, he was very patient. He was more than patient. Yes, he was. He was a lot of other things, too. I am trying very hard, Roman, not to become most of the other things. He nodded, slowly. I see that. Good. She stood up. Pavel looked up at her. Vera Yosifovna. Yes, Pavel. If I may. One question. 1. Your grandfather, when he died, did he say, did he leave a message of any kind about this matter? About me? She looked at him for a long time. He said many things before he died, Pavel. Most of them were to me, and they are not your business. But yes, he said something about you. He said that you were a tool. He said that the man who wielded the tool was the one who should be held accountable, and that the tool itself was a man who had made many bad choices in a world that had not given him many good ones, and that if I ever found myself in a room with you, I should remember that I was also a tool once, in his hand, and that tools, when they are allowed to set themselves down, can be something else in the time they have left. That is what he said about you. Pavel's face did not move, but his eyes, very slowly, filled. He did not cry. He was not a man who cried, but he sat there with his hands folded on the table, and his eyes were wet, and he bowed his head very slightly, and he said, in a voice that was not quite steady, Thank you, Vera Iosifovna. Thank him for me, if you can, wherever you think he is. I will, Pavel. She turned. Roman stood up, stood. He did not look at Pavel again. He walked to the door, and he put his hand on the knob, and he stopped. And without turning around, he said, Pavel. Yes, Mr. Varelli. The capo. The 3rd Street one. You did small work for him. You knew him. Yes, Mr. Varelli. Was there anyone else? A pause. Mr. Varelli. Yes. There is always someone else, in an organization the size of yours. I'm asking you a specific question. I know you are. Answer it. Pavel hesitated. Mr. Varelli, if I answer that question, I am giving you something that is not in the envelope on the table. I am giving you something that I had intended to keep as a small private asset in case the terms of our arrangement ever changed. I would prefer not to give it to you today because I'm a cautious man, but I will, If you insist. I insist. Then, yes, there is one other, a lieutenant in the Riverside crew, not the capo. A lieutenant. He has been taking smaller payments from a different account for about 4 years. The account is not connected to Odessa. It is connected to Siena Marchetti. A long, absolute silence. Roman turned around very slowly. What did you just say? Siena Marchetti, Mr. Varelli, your former companion. She has been paying a lieutenant in the Riverside crew small amounts for about 4 years. The information she has been purchasing is about you personally, your schedule, your movements, the health of your relationships, the names of women you have spent time with in the past. I do not know what she was intending to do with the information. She may have been intending to do nothing. She may have been intending to use it as leverage eventually if you ever tried to end the relationship. I do not know. I know only that the payments were made. I have the account number. It is in a second envelope that I did not intend to give you today. Mam pate. Give it to me today. It is in my right breast pocket, Mr. Varelli. Give it to me. Pavel reached slowly into his jacket. He took out a second envelope, thinner than the first, folded the same way. He pushed it down the table. Roman did not wait. He crossed the room, picked up the envelope, opened it, read. His face was very calm. Vera, watching him, saw the thing in his jaw move once, and she knew, with the cold, clear, mostly pity she was coming to recognize in herself whenever she looked at her husband now, that Roman had been able to accept, almost immediately, that Third Street had betrayed him, because Third Street was a business relationship, and business relationships could be broken. He had been able to accept that his wife had married him under false pretenses, because his wife had told him the truth in a library the night before, and he was the kind of man who, against his own worst instincts, respected the truth when it was handed to him. He was having more trouble with this, because this was a woman who had told him she loved him, in a bed, for 2 years. Vera did not say anything. She had, a long time ago, learned that there were moments when a man needed to be let through a door by himself. He folded the envelope, put it in his own jacket, put the first envelope in his own jacket, did not look at Pavel again. Pavel. Yes, Mr. Varelli. 3 hours. Airport. You will not see my face again. If you do, it will be because something has gone wrong, and by then it will already be too late for you. Do you understand? I understand. Thank you for the second envelope. You are welcome, Mr. Varelli. Roman opened the door. He walked out into the narrow hallway, and Vera walked out after him, and Dante was standing there with a half-smoked cigarette between 2 fingers. And he looked at them, and he counted, the way a man in his profession always counted. And he found that there were still 2 of them, and that both were still breathing. And he put the cigarette out against the heel of his shoe, and he said quietly, Boss? Dante. We good. We are good. The old man. He will be driven to an airport in 3 hours. Not my airport. No, Dante. A different airport. Vera has arranged it. Okay. Dante. Yes. 6 o'clock tonight. Sit down. All capos. My house. Big dining room. You are going to tell Third Street that I am furious about the Bel Air shipment. You are going to make him believe it. He is going to come. When he arrives, you are going to bring him to the big dining room, and I am going to be somewhere else in the house, and Vera is going to be at the table, and you are going to be at the table, and the other 3 capos are going to be at the table. And Vera is going to hand him a piece of paper, and he is going to read it, and then the 3 capos are going to handle it themselves. You will not handle it. You will sit. You will watch. You will let them. Do you understand? Dante did not answer for a moment. Vera at the table, he said. Yes. As what? As the person who brought the evidence. As my wife. As the woman who has been living in our house for 4 years, whom you and I have both underestimated, and who is not going to be underestimated by anybody in this organization ever again. Dante's eyes moved to Vera. She looked back at him. Mrs. Varelli, he said. Yes, Dante. If I may ask, at the end of the sit-down tonight, when Third Street has been handled, what happens to the rest of us? Dante. Yes. Nothing happens to the rest of you. You keep your crews. You keep your territories. You keep your earnings. You answer to Roman. Roman answers to himself. I do not want any of this. I do not want this organization. I do not want to run anything. I have my own things to run, which are none of your business, and which will continue to be none of your business as long as they do not touch you. What I want is very small, Dante. I want my husband to know who his people are. I want the man who ordered my parents dead to stop walking around on 2 legs. I want my bedroom back. That is what I want. Tonight we get 2 of the 3. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a short, tired, almost affectionate laugh, the laugh of a man who had been alive for 53 years and had thought, by now, that there was nothing new under the sun for him, and who had discovered, in one single morning, that he had been wrong about that. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Let's go home, Dante." "Yes, ma'am." They walked out into the gray noon light, and Luca was waiting with the Mercedes at the curb, and the gull was still screaming somewhere above the water. And Roman Varelli opened the door for his wife for the second time in 12 hours. And she got in, and he got in after her, and Dante got in the front with Luca, and the car pulled away from the safe house and turned south toward the city, toward the house on the hill, toward the long dining room where, at 6 o'clock that evening, the floor under a 20-year-old capo's chair was going to quietly give way, exactly the way he had never, in 20 years, considered it might. In the back seat, Vera let her head rest, just for a moment, against the cold glass of the window, and she closed her eyes, and for the first time since a basement apartment in a country that no longer existed, she allowed herself to think that the thing her grandfather had told her to wait for might, possibly, be arriving now, slowly, down a long gray road, in a black car, with a tired man beside her who had the hands of a killer and was trying, for the first time in 41 years, to figure out what those hands might be used for instead. The light in the big dining room at 6 o'clock that evening was the color of old brass. Marta had lit the candles along the center of the table, which she had not done for a sit-down in 15 years, because Roman's father had preferred the overhead bulbs, and Roman had simply kept the habit without ever thinking about it. The candles had been Vera's idea. She had said them to Marta in the kitchen at 4 quietly, while Roman was in his study on the phone with the third of the capos, and Marta had looked at her for one long second and then said, "Yes, Mrs. Varelli," and gone to the cabinet where the old candlesticks had been wrapped in velvet since before Vera was born. There were 6 chairs at the table now instead of 7. Roman's chair at the head was empty. He was, as his wife had said he would be, in his study, with the door closed, speaking on the phone with Marta's sister about her son's engagement party on Sunday. He had not wanted to make the call. He had sat at his desk and stared at the phone for almost 15 minutes before he dialed. Vera had come in once, without knocking, and put a glass of water on his desk, and put her hand, briefly, on the back of his neck. She had not said anything. She had walked out. He had picked up the phone. Dante sat at the table in his usual place, to the right of the empty chair at the head. He was not wearing his jacket. His shirt sleeves were rolled up to the forearms. His weapon was in its holster, visible, which was not how he normally sat at meetings in this house. It had been Vera's instruction. She wanted the other capos to see the gun. She wanted them to see it and to understand that it was not for them. Vera sat in the chair directly across from Dante, on the left of the empty head. She was wearing a simple charcoal dress, long-sleeved, high-necked, no jewelry except the small silver bird. She had her hands folded in front of her on the table. She was not drinking anything. She was not eating anything. She was, for the first time in 4 years, sitting at this table as herself. The other 3 capos came in together. They had been brought up the driveway in the same car, a gesture Dante had orchestrated earlier in the afternoon. There was Marco Salerno, who ran the harbor, Tommaso Greco, who ran the heights, and Enzo Di Palma, who ran the west side, and who was the oldest of the 3 at 58, a wiry man with a mustache and a way of tilting his head when he was listening that made him look like a bird deciding whether something on the ground was worth eating. The 3 of them stopped just inside the doorway. Marco said, "Vera." It was the first time any of them had called her Vera. She was always Mrs. Varelli, or sometimes the wife, if they thought she was not in earshot. "Marco, please, sit, all 3 of you." They looked at Dante. Dante said, "Sit." They sat. Marco took the chair to Vera's left. Tommaso took the chair next to Dante. Enzo, after a small hesitation that everyone at the table noticed and nobody remarked upon, took the chair at the foot of the table, which put him directly opposite the empty head. Nobody spoke for almost a minute. Then Enzo said slowly, "Dante." "Enzo." "Where is Roman?" "In his study." "Is he coming?" "Not tonight, Enzo." A pause. Enzo looked at Vera. His head was tilted the way it tilted when he was deciding. Mrs. Varelli. Yes, Enzo. Forgive me. I have known your husband since he was 16. I have sat at this table since before he was born. I have sat at this table with his father, with his uncle, with his grandfather. I have never sat at this table at a sit-down with a woman. I do not say this to offend you. I say it so you understand me when I ask, why am I sitting at this table tonight, with a woman at my boss's elbow and my boss not in the room? Because your boss asked you to, Enzo. He did not, Mrs. Varelli. Dante did. Dante spoke for him. Yes, he did. But I would like to hear from Roman before this evening goes any further that this is what Roman wants. I am sorry. That is what I would like. Vera did not answer. She looked at Dante. Dante rose. He walked out of the dining room. He was gone for about 90 seconds. Nobody at the table spoke during those 90 seconds. Marco poured himself a glass of water from the carafe in front of him and drank it. Tommaso folded his hands in his lap and stared at the candles. Enzo watched Vera, and Vera watched Enzo, and she did not, in those 90 seconds, look away from him once. Dante came back in. Roman was with him. Roman was still wearing the dark shirt and dark trousers he had worn all day. He had not shaved. His eyes were a little red around the edges, and Enzo, who had known him since he was 16, saw it and understood what it meant. Roman walked to the head of the table. He did not sit in the empty chair. He walked around it and stood behind it with his hands on the back of it. Enzo, Roman, you asked a question. I did. The answer is that this is what I want. Everything Dante told you on the phone this afternoon is what I want. Everything my wife says to you at this table tonight is what I want. She speaks with my voice tonight. She hands you paper tonight. You read it the way you would read it if I handed it to you. You have a question. You ask it to her the way you would ask it to me. At the end of the evening, what she has decided is what has been decided. Do you understand me? Enzo looked at him for a long moment. Roman? Yes. Are you all right? It was not the question a capo asked his boss at a sit-down. It was the question an older man asked a younger one in a kitchen at 2 a.m. Enzo had asked Roman that question, in that tone of voice, one time before, at Roman's father's funeral, on the steps of the church, in the rain. Roman did not answer right away. Then he said, I'm not all right, Enzo. I am not tonight. But I'm going to be. And the first thing I'm going to do, on the road to being all right, is trust my wife in this room tonight. So, sit. Listen. Do what she tells you. When this is over, you and I will have a drink, and I will tell you what I know, and you will tell me what you think, and we will figure out the rest of it together, the way we have always figured things out. Yes? Yes, Roman. Thank you, Enzo. Roman turned. He walked out of the dining room. The door closed behind him. Vera did not wait. Marco, Tommaso, Enzo, Dante. In about 20 minutes, Carmine Fazzi is going to arrive at this house. He is going to think he has been called here to answer to Roman about the Bel Air shipment. He is going to be shown into this room. He will sit at the head of the table, in Roman's chair. Roman will not be present. When Carmine sits down, I'm going to place a document in front of him. I would like each of you to read the document first. It will be passed to you in this order: Dante, Enzo, Tommaso, Marco. When it reaches Marco, Marco will hand it to me, and I will place it in front of Carmine. From that moment, nobody will speak except Carmine, until Carmine has finished reading, and has finished saying whatever he is going to say, and has finished offering whatever he is going to offer. After he has finished, the 4 of you will speak among yourselves, without me, and you will decide what is to be done. Roman will not be in the room. I will not be in the room after I have placed the document. Dante will remain. That is the rule. Dante remains to witness, not to vote. The vote is yours, 3 of you. That is the old way. Yes? Enzo nodded slowly. That is the old way. Good. She took the envelope out of her lap. She passed it to Dante. Dante read it. His face did not change. He had seen these papers already, twice, at 4 a.m. in a kitchen on the other side of town. He passed it to Enzo. Enzo put on a pair of small rectangular reading glasses that none of the men at the table had ever seen him wear. He read slowly. He read each of the 5 pages. He read 2 of them twice. When he was done, he took off the glasses and folded them and put them back in his pocket, and he sat very still for a long moment, and then he passed the envelope to Tommaso without a word. Tommaso read. Tommaso was 44. He had come up under Carmine. He had been a lieutenant in the 3rd Street crew for 6 years before Roman had given him the heights. He read the 5 pages, and by the 3rd page his jaw had gone hard, and by the 5th page his hand was shaking, just slightly, and when he was done he passed the envelope to Marco without looking up. Marco read. Marco was the quickest of the 3 readers. He finished in about 2 minutes. When he was done he looked at Vera. Mrs. Varelli. Yes, Marco. These accounts are authentic. Dante can confirm. Dante has verified them through a contact in a bank in a country I will not name, at my request, over the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Yes. So you have been sitting at this table, or near it, for 2 weeks, knowing. I have been sitting at this table, or near it, for 47 months, knowing some of it. The specific confirmations on the accounts I have had for 11 days. The full picture, including the name of the man in Odessa who has been paying, I have had since yesterday morning at 4. Marco looked at her. He did not look surprised exactly. He looked like a man recalculating a problem he had thought for many years that he had already solved. Okay, he said finally. He handed the envelope back to Vera. Vera set it, face down, on the table in front of the empty head chair. A long silence. Then Tommaso said very quietly, Mrs. Varelli. Yes? Before he comes, one question. Yes, Tommaso. If I am reading the timeline of these accounts correctly, the first wire transfer from Odessa to Carmine is dated almost 12 years ago. Yes. Roman's father died 11 years ago. Yes. So Carmine has been selling us to Odessa for a year before Roman was even boss. That is correct. He did it to Roman's father, too. He did it to Roman's father, too, although Roman's father never knew. Tommaso closed his eyes for a moment. I kissed his ring, Mrs. Varelli, at my confirmation as a lieutenant. That man's ring 15 years ago. I know, Tommaso. I would like to be the one. Tommaso. Mrs. Varelli, it is not my decision. I told you. The 3 of you decide. Dante does not vote. I do not vote. Roman does not vote. That is the old way. And tonight we are using the old way because tonight needs to be the old way, so that nobody can say tomorrow or in 10 years that Roman murdered his own capo. The 3 of you decide. You can give the job to whomever you like. You can give it to no one, and let him live in a box in a basement for the rest of his natural life. You can give it to Dante, who will refuse but who will do it if you insist. That is not my business. I am asking you only to decide. Okay, Tommaso said quietly. Okay, Mrs. Varelli. Thank you. The doorbell rang. Dante stood up. He walked out to the foyer. 2 minutes later, Dante walked back into the dining room with Carmine Fazzi. Carmine was a big man. 61 years old, heavy through the shoulders, with thick silver hair combed straight back and a face that had been, in its youth, very handsome, and was now something more interesting. The face of a man who had survived his own handsomeness. He was wearing a charcoal suit and a white shirt and no tie, and he had a gold ring on his left little finger that he had worn for 40 years. And there was a small smile on his mouth as he came in, because he had, on the way over, already figured out what he was going to say to Roman about the Bel Air shipment, and he was looking forward to saying it. He saw Vera at the table first. The smile did not leave his face exactly. It shifted. It became a slightly different smile, the one he used for Roman's wife when there was nothing else to do with his face. Mrs. Varelli, Carmine, I wasn't aware you would be joining us tonight. I was not aware myself until earlier today. Where is Roman? Dante closed the door behind him. Enzo said without looking at Carmine, Sit, Carmine. Enzo, sit. The smile faded. Not all at once. In stages. Carmine looked at Enzo, then at Marco, then at Tommaso, and then finally at the envelope on the table in front of the empty chair at the head. The way a man looks at a snake that has just moved under a rock he was about to pick up. He sat. He did not sit at the head. He sat in the chair Roman had stood behind. It was a small thing. Nobody at the table had told him to sit there specifically. He had chosen on his own not to take the head. It was the first admission, and he had made it before anyone had spoken. Vera picked up the envelope. She walked around the table. She placed the envelope on the wood in front of Carmine. She walked back to her seat. She sat. She folded her hands in her lap. Read it, Carmine, Enzo said. Carmine looked at the envelope. What is this? Read it. He opened it slowly. He took out the 5 pages. He read. His face at first did not change. It was the face he had worn through 6 federal investigations, 2 state grand juries, and a decade of lower-level rivalries. He had trained that face. He had built a career on it. By the 3rd page, it had started to fail him. By the 5th, it was gone entirely. And what was underneath it was an old man who had been discovered, and who had always known in some quiet room in the back of his own mind that he would be discovered eventually. He set the pages down. He looked at the 4 people at the table. He opened his mouth. This is Carmine. Enzo's voice was very quiet. Don't insult us. Don't tell us these are forgeries. Don't tell us Roman's father knew. Don't offer to pay. You have about 2 minutes in which you can say something that is worth saying. Use them. After that, we will decide without you in the conversation. Carmine closed his mouth. He looked at his hands on the table. Vera watched him. She felt nothing. She had expected for 11 months that at this moment she would feel a great many things. Relief, fury, grief, vindication. Some version of a peace she had been promising herself since she was 14. She felt none of it. She felt only a very deep, clean tiredness, like a person who has been carrying a large, heavy thing for a very long time and has finally set it down on a step. Carmine spoke. I started it in '96, he said. I was 31. I had a daughter who was sick. I needed money that was not in the books. The man in Vienna approached me. He paid me at first to tell him where 2 shipments would be on the night they arrived, so his people could steal them. The shipments were not ours. They were being moved through our territory by a crew out of Philly. I did not think of it as selling. I thought of it as arbitrage. He kept paying. The payments kept coming. By the time my daughter was better, the arrangement was a habit. When the man in Vienna died, in '09, I thought it would end. It didn't end. The Odessa people took his file. They kept paying. They wanted the same things, shipping routes, schedules, not the big ones, the small ones, the ones that looked like losses to weather or incompetence, for 12 years. He stopped. Nobody spoke. He spoke again. The thing with the girl's family. 19 years ago. That was me. I want to say that. I am sitting here, and I am looking at the woman who was 14 years old on the night that I arranged it, and I am saying that I did it. Her grandfather had something I wanted, an interest in a piece of real estate in a city none of you have been to, a piece of real estate that my friends in Vienna also wanted. I hired a man named Sokolov. Sokolov hired Pavel. Pavel hired the 3. The 3 did what they did. I didn't know there was a girl in the house. I wouldn't have cared if I had known. That is the truth. I am 61 years old. I am not going to stand here and tell you I would have cared. I wouldn't have. Not then. He turned his head. He looked at Vera. Mrs. Varelli. Yes, Carmine. I am sorry. Vera did not answer. I know, he said. That is a small thing. I know that. I am saying it anyway because I was raised to say it, even in rooms where it did not matter, and especially in rooms where it did not matter. My mother, never mind my mother. I am sorry. That is all. Vera looked at him for a very long moment, then she said, Carmine. Yes, I am not the one you have to apologize to tonight. I am the one you have to sit across from. It is not the same thing. Your apology to me is noted, and it does not move anything. The people at this table are who you have to apologize to, because you have been taking money from their enemies for 12 years while eating at their table, and they are going to decide in about 30 minutes, without me in the room and without my husband in the room, what is done with you. I have no say. That is not a kindness I am extending to you. It is the shape of the room tonight. Do you understand? I understand, Mrs. Varelli. Good. She stood up. She walked to the door. She stopped. She turned. Dante. Ma'am. I will be in the small sitting room upstairs. When it is finished, come and tell me. Yes, ma'am. She walked out. She did not go up the stairs immediately. She went first to Roman's study. She did not knock. She opened the door. Roman was at the window, with his back to the room, hands in his pockets, watching the east lawn, which was dark now. Roman. Yes, I am going up to your mother's sitting room. You are welcome to join me. You do not have to. The thing in the dining room is not going to be done for a while. I do not think tonight that you should be alone in this study staring out the window, but it is your choice. He did not turn around. Vera. Yes, I keep thinking about the first night in Geneva. I keep thinking about how you said yes too fast. And I keep thinking that at the time I thought I had charmed you, and now I know you chose me. And I am sitting here trying to figure out which of those two things is worse. Neither of them is worse, Roman. How do you figure? Because they are the same thing, approached from different angles. A person who chooses you and who then spends 4 years in your house, and who then sits across from you last night in a library and tells you the truth when she did not have to. That person is a person who picked you. It is not a compliment. It is not a love song. But it is not nothing. And there are men in the world who have been chosen by no one, for any reason, ever. You do not get to feel sorry for yourself tonight about having been chosen. He laughed. It was a strange, tired laugh. Vera. Yes. Come here. She walked to him. She did not take his hand. She stood beside him at the window. They were both looking at the dark lawn. Somewhere in the house, in the big dining room, 3 men were, at that moment, deciding the details of how another man would leave the world. Neither of them spoke of it. Vera. Yes. I am going to dismantle it. Dismantle what? A lot of it. Not all of it. I can't do all of it. The organization keeps a lot of people fed. The people who are fed by it are not going to understand if I tear it all up overnight. But a lot of it. The parts that I started keeping because my father kept them. The parts that make money because they hurt people who did not sign up to be hurt. Those parts. I'm going to stop doing those parts. I do not know how yet. I will figure it out. I will need help. I will need Dante. I will need Enzo. I will need you, probably, although I do not have the right to ask. You have the right to ask, Roman. Will you help me? Yes, Roman. Why? She thought about it for a long moment. Because I spent 4 years watching you, she said finally. And in the middle of those 4 years, I saw you refuse to do something ugly to a boy from the neighborhood, and I saw you refuse to do something ugly to the wife of a rival who came to you for protection. And I saw you refuse to do something ugly to a reporter whose car your people had already removed the brakes from. And I saw you quietly cover the cost of a child's surgery for a woman who used to work in your father's house, and who you had not seen in 20 years. I saw you do these things, Roman. I cataloged them. I did not include them in any report. They were not useful to me. I kept them for myself. I told myself for 4 years that they did not mean anything, that they were random and small and did not add up to a man. And then last night you took a phone call in your study with the door open because you wanted me to hear you end something you thought I wanted you to end, and I walked past the door and I heard you, and I understood that I had been lying to myself about those 4 years. They did add up to a man. Not a good man. Not yet. A man who could become one, if someone told him that was allowed. No one had ever told you that was allowed, Roman. Nobody in your father's life, nobody in this house. I am telling you now, it is allowed. He did not answer. He did not move. But after a minute, he lifted his hand and he put it very carefully against the back of her neck, the same small place she had put her hand earlier on him in the study. And he did not pull her toward him, and he did not squeeze. He just held it there, the way you hold something you are afraid might still walk away. They stood at the window like that for a long time. At some point, they heard Dante's footsteps in the hall. Dante knocked. He did not come in. Boss? Yes, Dante. It's done. Okay? Enzo handled it, not Tommaso. Enzo asked for it. Tommaso let him. They did it in the wine cellar. It was quiet. Nobody on the grounds heard. The body is in the van already. It will not come up. The terms of it are that it will not come up. Okay, Dante. Tommaso and Marco would like to speak with you in the morning. Tell them 9 a.m. My office. Yes, boss. A pause. Boss. Yes, Dante. Enzo wanted me to tell you, and these are his words, not mine, that he is too old to sit at a sit-down with a woman at the table, and that he is, however, very glad tonight that he did. He said to tell you that your wife conducted herself like an old country matriarch, and that if it pleases you, he would like to, at his leisure and with her permission, begin to call her by her first name. He said he has not called a woman who was not his mother by her first name since his wife died in 1998. He said he is asking your permission because that is the old way. I am reporting this to you verbatim, boss, because he made me repeat it back to him to be sure I would. Roman laughed. It was a real laugh. Short, quiet, a little broken, but a real one. Dante. Yes, boss. Tell Enzo that I'm touched. Tell him my wife is honored. Tell him, of course, and tell him that if he would like to have dinner in this house on Sunday, both of us would be very glad to have him. Yes, boss. Good night, Dante. Good night, boss. Mrs. A small, amused pause. Good night, Vera. Good night, Dante. The footsteps went away. Vera and Roman stayed at the window. After a while, she said quietly, Roman. Yes. Sienna. I know. It is not tonight, but it is not never. I know, Vera. I am not going to tell you what to do about her. I am not your mother. I am not your conscience. I'm going to tell you what I think one time, and then I'm not going to tell you again, if you want my opinion. I want your opinion. Let her go. He did not answer for a long time. Not in the soft way, Vera said. I do not mean the soft way. She will not take the soft way. She sent a message last night, Roman, to the man in Odessa. I do not know how she knew about him. Possibly through Carmine. Possibly on her own. She was in motion before you ended the call, which means she has been in motion for a while. I have already intercepted the message. She does not know I have. She is waiting at a bench in the park tomorrow at 11 for a man who is not going to come. When he does not come, she will call another number. That number has also been redirected. By tomorrow afternoon, she will understand that her avenues have closed, one after another, and she will come to you, Roman. She will come here. She will stand in our foyer. She will say something to you which will be, in her own mind, an ultimatum, and you will have to make a choice. What choice, Vera? The choice between what your father would have done in the foyer and what you will do. He was very quiet. What would my father have done? Your father would have killed her in the foyer, Roman. You know that. Yes, I know that. I am not asking you to kill her. Please understand that. I am not asking you to kill her for me. I have never asked you to kill anybody for me, and I am not going to start now. What are you asking? I am asking you, tomorrow afternoon, when she stands in your foyer and tries to threaten you, to let her walk out of it, without a car, without a name, without any of the money she has put aside in your accounts, which I have already moved, and which she will discover, around 4 o'clock, that she can no longer reach. Let her walk out of this house tomorrow with nothing but the clothes on her body and the understanding that if she ever comes back, or if she ever speaks to anyone about any of this, the file I am holding, the one that connects her to the lieutenant in the Riverside crew, and the lieutenant to Carmine, and Carmine to Odessa, becomes public. That file will not put her in prison. She has not done enough for that. It will, however, end her in every room in this city, in this country, and in 2 other countries. She will not be able to walk into a boutique on Madison again. She will not be able to have lunch at the club. She will be, in every way that matters to her, finished. That will be enough. That will be more than enough. Let her walk out, Roman. Don't send anyone after her. Don't ask about her in 6 months. Don't ask about her in 6 years. Just let her go. Roman thought about it for a long time. Okay, he said. Okay, Vera. Okay. They stood at the window. The east lawn was very dark, but the kitchen light was on at the far end of the house, and they could see faintly the silhouette of Marta moving around in it, the way she had moved around in it every night at this hour for 40 years. She was making herself a cup of tea. She would drink it standing at the counter. She would wash the cup by hand. She would turn off the light. She would go to bed. She had watched, through the window of that kitchen, many things happen on that lawn, under previous bosses, and she had never said one word about any of them to anyone. She would not tomorrow say one word about tonight. Vera thought about Marta for a moment, about the strange small bow Marta had given her in the foyer the night before, about the way Marta had poured coffee for her that morning without asking, about the old woman's face in the kitchen, moving slowly in the yellow light, making tea in a house where a man had just been killed in the wine cellar and a marriage had just been, quietly, in a window on the second floor, built for the first time. That was the thing, Vera thought. That was the small, uncomfortable thing that nobody in the stories about women like her ever wanted to say out loud. Power was not a crown. Power was not a throne. Power was a cold thing. Power was the ability to sit in a room where a man confessed to the murder of your parents, and to not scream, and to not weep, and to do arithmetic instead. Power was the ability to know, at 33, that you had become very good at something your grandfather had spent his own life trying not to be very good at. Power was loneliness with a silver pendant around its neck, which she had been given tonight, in this house, in this window, standing next to this imperfect, half-ruined man who had spent the day learning that he had not been, in any of the ways that mattered, who he had thought he was. What she had been given tonight was not power. She had already had power. She had come into this house with it. She had worn it like a collar for 4 years so that no one would notice. What she had been given tonight was something smaller, someone to set it down in front of. Not forever. Not all of it. She was not going to stop being the woman she had made herself in that basement apartment long ago, any more than Roman was going to stop being a man with blood on his hands. There were going to be mornings, for the rest of their lives together, when she would look across the breakfast table at him and feel, in some small cold place in her chest, the pull of a country where he did not exist and had never existed. There were going to be mornings when he looked across that same table at her and thought about the version of his life in which his wife had been, in fact, the dish rag his mistress had named her, and in which his life had stayed small and violent and certain, and in which he had died at 50 in a chair in this house of a bullet he had not seen coming. Those mornings would happen. She was not going to lie to herself about them. She was not going to lie to him either. But there would also be, she thought, mornings like the one she could faintly see, 6 months from now, a year from now, in which she would come down the stairs and find him at the kitchen table with Marta, and they would be talking about something ordinary, and he would look up at her, and there would be, on his face for a quarter of a second, the face of a man who had not been raised to have that face, and who had learned it late, and who was still not very good at it, but who was trying. That was the thing she had not known she was going to want when she had walked into the Castellano penthouse last night in a black dress her grandfather would have recognized. It turned out, to her private surprise, to be the thing she had wanted the whole time. Roman. Yes, Vera. Come to bed. To our bed. To our bed, Roman. He did not answer with words. He simply took his hand off the back of her neck and turned from the window, and together they walked out of his mother's sitting room and down the long hallway and past the guest room where he had slept the night before, and into the bedroom at the end of the hall where, for 4 years, a woman named Vera Dane had slept mostly alone under the name of another woman, and Roman closed the door behind them, and the hallway was quiet, and the house was quiet, and down in the big dining room Marta had already come in, without being asked, and was putting out the candles one by one with a small brass snuffer, because that was her job, and because the candles in that room had, after 15 years, been lit again, and somebody had to put them out. The city below the hill kept doing what the city did. A ship moved slowly down the dark harbor. A patrol car turned a corner in a neighborhood on the west side, and nobody inside the car knew, or would ever know, what had happened in the Varelli wine cellar that evening. A man in an apartment on the east side read a message that had been forwarded to him in error and felt, for a long minute, that something had gone quietly and permanently wrong in a city he had been paid to influence from 6,000 miles away. A woman in a gold dress sat at her kitchen table with an empty wine glass in front of her, and did not yet know that by the following afternoon she would be walking out of a house on a hill with nothing in her hands, and that, for the rest of her life, she would not quite be able to account for how it had happened. And in the house on the hill itself, upstairs, behind a closed door, a woman who had spent 19 years being patient discovered, to her quiet relief, that she did not have to be patient anymore. Not tonight, not in this room, not with this man. There would be other rooms and other nights, and a great many other kinds of patience still required of her. She had signed up for that a long time ago. But tonight was the one she had been carrying the weight for. She set it down. The thing nobody in this world ever told you, she thought, as she lay there afterward in the dark with her husband's heavy, unfamiliar hand across her waist. The thing they did not tell you in any of the stories about quiet wives and frightened girls in basements was that the people who survived were not the ones who swore, at 14, to burn everything to the ground. Those people mostly did not make it to 30. The people who survived were the ones who, at 14, decided to listen, and wait, and become, over time, something useful. And who then, at the end of the long waiting, when the room finally went quiet and the enemy finally sat down across the table, were not destroyed by the arrival of what they had been waiting for. Because that was the trap, at the end of the long waiting. A person could become so good at waiting that, when the thing they had been waiting for finally arrived, they could not do anything except keep waiting. They could not stop. They could not accept the thing. They could not set it down. They kept carrying it, out of habit, for the rest of their lives, and it killed them slowly from the inside, because the weight they had been built to carry was the weight that was no longer there. Her grandfather, in the end, had not survived that trap. She had watched him try. She had watched him fail. Lying in the dark, in the bed she had slept in mostly alone for 4 years, with a man beside her whom she had chosen for one reason and stayed with for another, Vera Dane made herself a promise. It was not a promise about revenge. Revenge was finished. It had ended in a wine cellar downstairs about 90 minutes ago, and she had not been in the room, and she was not going to ask anyone, ever, what it had looked like. Revenge was not the promise. The promise was smaller and harder. The promise was that tomorrow, when she woke up, she was going to let the silver bird stay in the small velvet box on her dresser. She was not going to wear it to breakfast. She was not going to wear it to the meeting with Tommaso and Marco at 9. She was going to put on a gray sweater, and she was going to drink her coffee, and she was going to be, for the first time in 19 years, a woman who was not, every minute of every day, in the middle of carrying out her grandfather's last wishes. She was going to be instead a woman who had finished carrying them out, and who now had the rest of her life to figure out what else she was. It was, she thought, not a bad kind of quiet to come home to. Next to her, in the dark, Roman Virelli was awake. She could tell by his breathing. She did not say anything to him. She did not need to. He did not need her to. They were both very tired. They were both, in their separate ways, working out a new arithmetic, and the arithmetic was going to take years, possibly the rest of their lives, and there was no shortcut through it tonight. Tonight was only the beginning of the arithmetic. But somewhere toward the middle of the night, his hand moved slightly on her waist. She did not think he did it on purpose. He was asleep by then, or almost. The hand just moved. A small unconscious tightening, the way a person in sleep pulls a blanket toward themselves in a room that has gotten, without their knowing, a little cold. It was the smallest thing. It would not have mattered on any other night of her life. It mattered on this one. She closed her eyes, and in the quiet dark of the house on the hill, while Marta went to bed and Dante locked the gate, and a black van moved along a stretch of road that did not appear on any map, and a woman in a gold dress made a phone call that would never be answered, Vera Dane, who had been many names and had answered to most of them, and had been for 4 long years the invisible wife of a ruthless empire, quietly and without ceremony, and without anyone in the world knowing it but herself, became the thing no amount of fear and no amount of power and no amount of waiting could ever have made of her on its own. She became at last simply a woman in her own bed, in her own house, with nothing left in the world that she had to do tonight. And that, she understood, as sleep came for her at last. That, and not the dress, and not the pendant, and not the envelope, and not the room full of men who had gone silent when she walked in. That was the thing her grandfather had actually been trying, all those years, to give her. She had finally, after all this time, figured out how to accept it. The house was quiet. The candles were out. The city kept on below the hill. And a marriage that had begun as a lie and had survived a reckoning, and had, in the small hours of one very long night, chosen to try being something honest for whatever years it had left. That marriage, unaware of itself, slept on.